standing by.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the sunrise safari, or in theory a sunrise safari. It's a bit hidden behind the clouds at the moment. And an exciting morning we have planned, because somewhere on Juma there are lions calling. So a big thank you to Kevin and to Lucy and many others who let us know that they heard lions calling on the Juma Dam camera. We're very lucky to have such avid viewers. We've also heard them. I'm just trying to figure out where they've gone. And on this chilly morning, 19 degrees, 66 in Fahrenheit, we're setting out on a lion excursion. Good morning again, my name is Jamie. I have Jeandre on camera with me, and James is out with Dave, also helping to try and find the lions. We're going to see if we can figure out exactly where they were calling from. When I first heard them calling, they were on the move, somewhere around the eastern section of Juma, but James has just picked up tracks around the pan. So for those of you who said you heard something drinking, now of course our Juma cam is a little bit stuck at the moment. We are working on it, but obviously they couldn't see what was drinking. But we think it's the lions, and that they were moving somewhere around here. Quarantine is full of very relaxed looking Impala, so I don't think the lions have come up through here, but you never know. What I wanted to do was just sit and listen to the sounds, wait for the lions to call once again to maybe give us a bit more of a direction as to where they might be. And I thought I heard males calling as well, but it's the unkuhumas that, or probably the unkuhumas that James has found tracks for. He said it's the tracks of a pride. I'm just sitting listening. At the moment, all I've heard is the ground hornbills tooting off in different directions. That doot, 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 doot sound. No calls of the lions yet. I think we're going to start heading out. Let's see if we can't figure out which way these lions have gone. James is checking to the west of us. We're going to check around Twin Dams, and let's see if we can work this out. I don't think I actually need this hat in hindsight. It's not exactly blindingly bright. Try and keep my revs as low as possible, so if we hear the lions start to call again, we'll be able to hear them. So yesterday on the sunset safari, for those of you who missed it, James had the Nkuhumas around Buffelshoek Dam. They obviously decided to come around in this particular area. There's also always the possibility of the Birmingham boys deciding to come and join them. Come on, lions, we need you to call again. On a cool morning like this morning, it can be surprisingly deceptive, the distance that a lion roar can travel. The colder it is, the further the sound will go. Generally, we can hear a lion's call from about 4 to 5 kilometers, about just under 2 miles to just under 4 miles in distance. Lions, of course, can hear their roars far better than we can, and they can travel up to 10 kilometers in terms of their hearing, which is far, far clearer than ours. But for those of you who are joining us for the first time, don't forget that we are coming to you live, and we're coming to you live from Juma and Arathusa game reserves within the Sabi Sands, which essentially puts us in our own little portion of a 4 million hectare wilderness area, totally unfenced. Animals can come and go at will. Elephants have done some landscaping. They've also, by the way, an update on the Inga's elephant that keeps deciding to come in. Yesterday was responsible for, well, I was more responsible for it, but he was responsible for knocking me on the head with a branch. This morning he's actually come and pushed a tree down completely into our driveway, so getting out this morning was a little bit tricky. Obviously decided that Inga's is the place to be overnight. Large bull, there were huge elephant tracks in our driveway, and it did wake me up at 1 o'clock this morning as he pushed that tree over right outside my bedroom window. I'm going to continue on along Twin Dams, and while I do that, let's pop over to James Hendry's vehicle so that he can say good morning to you.
Good morning, as Jamie instructed. How are you? I hope you're very well wherever you happen to find yourself on planet Earth today, be it in the evening in the Western Hemisphere, or be it in probably the late hours of today, if you happen to be watching from Fiji or indeed Western Australia. It's marvellous to have you with us here live out of the iconic Kruger National Park of South Africa. Off to the east there, we can see a sort of lightening horizon. It is mercifully covered by some clouds for now. These will no doubt burn off in the face of the violent African sun that has been very, very powerful throughout the course of the summer. Now just take a look, Dave. I don't know if you can see there. The clouds are moving unusually from the northeast. Now that is odd, and indicates a weather pattern coming in off the coast of Mozambique. So we are only about 200 kilometers from the Mozambican Channel of the Indian Ocean. And that's the channel that is between Mozambique and Madagascar. And quite a lot of weather comes up through there at this time of the year, and weather that is coming in from the direction you can see it moving now is almost certainly coming in off the channel there, as opposed to up from the south, which would have eventually originated in the Cape of Good Hope, the Fair Cape, place of great beauty and very lazy people. My name is James Hendry, and it is very nice to be with you this morning. David is on camera. He would show you his thumb, but unfortunately he is shining a light on my face by means of his cell phone, and therefore he is unable to put his thumb up. He is smiling, though, and very pleased to be with you too.
Oh, yes.
And nodding, yes. You are on live safari, which Jamie told you, so please do talk to us through the course of the morning. The dawn chorus today consists of one grey-headed sparrow just behind us, and so should you wish to tweet like the grey-headed sparrow, hashtag SafariLIVE is how you should do so, and if you wish to send us an email, questions@wildearth.tv. Otherwise, the YouTube chat function seems to work very well, and you can talk to us on that too. Ask us questions, give us your comments, and they don't have to be necessarily completely related to what we're seeing here. Any questions about Africa or the country in general, we'll be more than happy to answer, especially if we're just driving around exploring. We don't know what's going to be around the next corner, and we are just listening out for those lions which, in rather typical fashion, have ceased their calling basically as we came out here. No, just silent. So we're going to ease our way to the south very slowly and see if we can't pick up some tracks. We did have some tracks around Quarantine, but when we heard them calling, they were calling definitely further south. Now, Sharon, you want to know, or Shannon, you want to know how it is that we can possibly tell the difference between male and female calls. Shannon, I have to tell you that I still struggle. Unless I hear them calling together, I really do struggle to tell. Females are slightly softer, and as one might expect, a slightly higher pitch, but it's still a very throaty roar. It's not exactly a gentle soprano that comes out of a lioness's mouth. It is still a throaty, blood-curdling roar. A male louder and slightly deeper, but unless I hear them together, I can't really tell, and I often dispute that people say, oh, there's a lioness calling. I'm not convinced. I've got pretty sensitive ears, and I'm not convinced that there are many who can actually tell unless you hear them calling next to each other. So, Shannon, that's basically what I think. And obviously almost impossible for you to hear through these cameras at the moment, and through the microphones, for example, that are at the Juma Dam camp. No, just the grey-headed sparrow. He's the only one up this morning. Let's ease our way south and see if we can find something in the way of tracks. So there were some tracks coming west, and so maybe we'll find them coming west further. It's an interesting one from Angel's Aegis. You want to know about nocturnal animals, and given the fact that it is still so early, would it be possible to see some of the nocturnal creatures? Perhaps a civet, which we know is active at late night, an aardvark, which we know, unless it is dead, is also active in the late night. I make that comment, of course, because we found an expired one yesterday. It was a fascinating discovery. No, not really, Angels. Just, you know, morning now. We're now in the morning. It's quite early for us, but for the animals, for the nocturnal animals, the active time is finished now. The light is up. Possible predators will be around. Now is the time of crepuscular animals, animals that are active dawn and dusk. The cats, well, the big cats, the smaller cats will be in their hidey holes for the course of the day now, as will things like the scrub hares. It's unlikely you'll see a scrub hare feeding at this time of the night. Aardvark, the same sort of story. So no, not really. Morning for us starts when it gets light. For most of the animals, it starts probably about half an hour to an hour beforehand. And that's why the lions have stopped calling. They will often call their last before the dawn breaks, and then they go silent. Especially if they've had something to eat during the night, and they just want to have a snooze now for the next 16 hours or so. So we'll drive slowly along this road here and see if we can't pick up some tracks. So quarantine clearings is basically over there behind us. So just over your left shoulder. And if you look behind you, you might be able to see quarantine clearings. One day you will actually be able to do that when we're broadcasting in virtual reality. But today David will just show you. That's your left shoulder, you're looking over, everyone. And they were coming to the west from there, and we have come there too, but the sound that they were making sorry, I'm giggling at a question that's coming through, but the sound that we were hearing from those lions was coming from the south around here. Thank you, James Richard. You say that I'm getting, there are two aspects to your comment. You say I'm getting better at fitting the YouTube chat function into my opening monologue. Now, a monologue, of course, comes with a sort of sense of droning on about nothing, I find. I think soliloquy would possibly be a kinder term, James. I hope that I'm not droning on too much when I begin my drives. Here is a little Impala who is running away from us. It's actually quite a big Impala. David, can you see him? There he is. Just walking off into the greenery, well, the yellowing greenery of the morning. Now these fellows are starting to develop the sort of secondary sexual characteristics that testosterone produces. Now what that means is that their time of rutting or fighting with each other for mating opportunities has actually almost begun. We've seen one or two of them chasing each other about, and by secondary sexual characteristics, I mean that they're starting to get quite heavy in the neck, so they're getting a bit stronger, they're ready to box their heads together. Their testicles will start to drop down, and they will start to get a lot more angry. And it's an interesting thing that they shouldn't be like that all the time, and the Kudu are getting the same. I mean, it's basically like an injection of anabolic steroids, like a power lifter or some other such person who wished to be very large might develop as a result of a huge influx of hormone. Obviously, that's not particularly healthy all the time. There's some buffalo over there. I'll just get into a position to look at them. But also, it's very expensive for the body to produce testosterone all the time. And so it's rather clever that they only produce it when the females are about to come into estrus. The rest of the time, they're just relaxed and happy with each other. There are some buffalo bulls here. I think let's have a look at them. Good grief, what did I just run over? A small stick. And the point of having a look at these buffalo off the road here is just also so that we can have a further listen to what's going on. There we go, David. I don't think that we'll intrude on their privacy too much more than we are now. So these are buffalo bulls, often a favored target of the Nkuhuma pride. but they look deeply relaxed. Some of them lying, some of them standing. They're almost, to me, look like men who've had a heavy night out and they're now sort of having a meal just before they go to sleep. Like English aristocrats of old. Big night out. Carriages are about to be called. The oxpeckers, of course, have just woken up. Here's a lovely example of an animal to whom the morning comes, or for whom the morning comes much earlier than it might for us. The oxpeckers are up and about. That means they've been flying around looking for herbivores to sit on. Those are the birds sitting on that buffalo. And they've been doing that since the very first little bit of light came over the horizon. They got up and they started moving around. For them, early, as we would describe it, as I say, is probably about an hour before dawn. And it's amazing to me how quickly the light glows. When we started off, of course, it was pretty much dark. Chewing the cud. Let's see if we can hear any further birds calling. There are the oxpeckers going pss, pss, pss. Still lots of sparrows and some drongos now and an oriole. So the drongos are the ones off to the left-hand side of your screen going. There are the oxpeckers you can hear. And then to the right-hand side, you can hear the orioles going, pachoo, 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 and a grey hornbill calling. Psst, psst, psst. Plaintive, sad, mournful whistling of the grey hornbill. Miserable because it has no colour on it, like its yellow and red-billed cousins. And a lovely sense, lovely smell out this morning too. Fresh, but slightly moisture-laden and dusty. Now, very excitingly, of course, we have some moisture predicted for Wednesday. How we are going to get through to Wednesday is another matter, of course, because another 2 days of blinding heat are predicted, leading up to the breaking of the drought. 38 degrees Celsius today, which is about 98 degrees Fahrenheit, driving up to 39-40 tomorrow, 102 Fahrenheit. That will not be easy to cope with. But we will be stoic. We will take you on safari nevertheless. So these beefies have been feeding during the night. I think as the heat builds, they are going to go and find some shade and lie down and have a snooze for much of the rest of the day, a bit like the lions. They'll move a bit more than that, though, because they need to eat so much more. And in the meantime, let us continue. While we do that, let's get an update from Jamie. I think she was probably heading in a more accurate direction for where we think those lions were calling from, but the tracks were coming around about here, so between the two of us, let's hope we can find out at least if they've crossed out, and if they haven't, maybe we'll have some lions. See you just now.
I hope I'm heading in a more accurate direction than James is. I'm basically going off gut instinct, unless James has got more fresh tracks that he hasn't mentioned since he found those at the dam. Essentially what I'm doing is trying to go with where I heard them rather than where their tracks came from. Although the central road is not looking terribly promising in terms of tracks. There's just one buffalo with diarrhea. No tracks coming along here. Which it is the route I would have expected them to take from Vulture Dam. Just turn this down a little bit. And I'm guessing, it's an entirely pretty much guesswork. I'm just trying to work out if maybe they had killed something around Vulture Dam and walked towards the pan for a drink and then come back. But that doesn't entirely make sense because Vulture Dam has a little bit of water. So they might have killed something in between there. It's a guess, and the reason I say that is because last night was cloudy, last night was windy, perfect hunting conditions if you're a big cat. So there's a chance that they managed it. I just want to double check really carefully here. Okay. All right, should we go left? Should we go right? To the right is east, which is where my gut instinct says that they were calling from. To the left is where James saw the tracks. Let us see if we can work out where we want to go. We go with my gut. Should we go with my gut feeling? Oh, if it's wrong, I'm going to be very sad. That's left. That's right. Okay, let's go right. Let's see how we go. I'm not sure if this is going to work out well for us, but hopefully we'll have a chance to figure it out. Oh, but the tracks were there. No, let's stick with it. Let's make a decision and actually stick to it. We'll do one more loop and then I'll go back towards where James is. Gut instinct tells me they were calling from here. You were chatting a little bit with James about the difference between male and female roars, and Teresa has put forward a comment that, as she said in her experience, male lions' roars sound a little bit like they have a sore throat, whereas the roar of a female is a little bit clearer. In my experience, it is actually very tricky. I agree with you, Teresa. Actually, I think having a sore throat is a brilliant description of what a lion roar sounds like. In my experience with male lion roars, let's come down here. With male lions roaring, they tend to be not really that much deeper, not discernibly deeper at a distance, but for me they tend to go on slightly longer. And by that I mean not just the roar itself, but those softer calls afterwards. The ooh, 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 ooh. For me, at the end of the call, male lions tend to harp on a little bit longer than the females. Makes sense because they are probably more likely to need to use those roars as an intimidation factor. For the females, it's a nice way of announcing where they are. Of course, both males and females have territories, although the males are much more stringent about the way that they patrol and much stricter with the incursions of other males in their space. But females can also have serious disagreements. I know the Nkuhumas and Sticks did have a minor encounter a couple of weeks ago where the Nkuhumas chased the Sticks away from around Cheetah Plains area. It does happen. Unrelated lion prides do not appreciate each other's company. But it is interesting because I think if you go far enough back, you'd probably find that most of the lion prides in this area probably have some degree of genetic relationship. Lion prides are formed when other lion prides get too large and they split away. Now, it could well be that the Talamatis and the Nkuhumas are related, or the Nkuhumas and the Sticks. One of those interesting aspects of lion history. I'm glad that Brian and Doodles and James Richards have all agreed with me and said, go with your gut feeling. I'm going to. There's another reason I'm checking this eastern edge, and that's the fact that James actually can't in terms of signal at the moment. So I'm leaving him to check the western boundaries while I check the east. But my gut so far has not been backed up by either calls or by tracks. Come on, gut. I hope you've got it right this morning, and it's not just hunger pangs that I'm experiencing. Where to go from here? Okay, I now have a set plan. I've got a set plan in my mind. I know where we're off to. We'll just keep working in a grid until we figure something out. And while we cruise along, and see if my gut instinct was correct or not. James has found one of the largest creatures, in fact, the largest creature that we have on Juma. Let's pop over and have a look.
Starting anew.
Just over there through the thick bush is a, well, not the largest elephant I've ever seen by any means, but one elephant indicating the presence of others by his age. Oh goodness, there's a tiny one here. Didn't even see it. You see it there, Dave? There's a band to the left. Keep going. Stop. No, keep going. There. Look at that. They are so clever, the way they hide. I don't want to go any closer at this stage. We're not far from them, but the bush is very thick. I think I'll make a noise. And these two, I think, are on the fringes of a herd, and they will therefore probably get a little bit of a fright and move towards wherever the rest of the herd is. Can you hear the hornbills? That plaintive calling of the grey hornbill? There they go. So sad. Bit more of a dawn chorus, but still nothing particularly impressive. I think that's beautiful. That little thing is only about 20 or 30 meters from us, say 100 feet or so. Here it comes. There we go, breaking cover slowly. Will be very aware of us and trying to stay slightly hidden away from us until sure that we're not, that we don't have any nefarious intentions. And of course, the more we sit and the more we spend time being quiet and accommodating to the elephants, the more they will behave like that incredible sighting that Jamie had last night, where they just walk past the vehicle, pay you no attention whatsoever, and get on with their lives. And that's just the best. And Deborah, armchair traveller, you're absolutely correct. It is absolutely astonishing how an elephant is able to disappear, despite their vast size, behind just a scraggly bush or tree. Now, I think half of the reason for that is their colour. That grey colour is brilliant, especially to our eyes, that grey colour is very difficult to see out here. And instead of this kind of bright khaki that many of us wear, we did a wonderful experiment the other day with Brian, who was wearing supposedly, camouflaged khaki colour. And it was so obvious in the bush because nothing else is that colour. But this grey colour, if we really wanted to be disguised in the bush, this grey colour of elephants is brilliant. And if you go behind just a little thicket, you just disappear almost completely. I think, though, there's quite a lot of sort of just almost luck behind that grey colour. The skin of just about all animals out here, if you take off the fur, is quite a similar grey, dark grey to that. If you think of a domestic animal, if you think of your house cat or your dog, the skin underneath the fur is often a grey colour. And so I wonder if the fact that elephants are grey is just a function of the fact that they don't have much hair on them, rather than a specific design to be disguised. Because, of course, their major defence is hardly going to be camouflage. Their major defence is the fact that they're so enormous. The same goes for a hippopotamus, the same goes for a rhino. So unless you have some kind of lack of pigmentation or albinism, that grey colour is quite common. But they do say, nothing in biology makes any sense except for in the light of evolution. And basically what that means is that it's highly unlikely that there would be any adaptation that an elephant or any other animal would have unless it conferred some kind of advantage. So I would imagine that there has been evolutionary pressure, selective pressure, to make elephants the color that they are. Now, Anna, while we're watching these two engaged in what is, I'm sure, a conversation, the youngster and possibly its mother, you want to know if I've ever seen elephants mourning. Anna, I have, and it was a very moving, I've seen it a few times, but the one time that I remember specifically, look at this. This is how elephants change the structure of a landscape completely. And eating bark at this time of the year is an indication of severe lack of grass and appropriate foliage. At this time of the year, elephants do not eat bark. This is a kind of end of the dry season meal that she's just had there. Anyway, Anna, I was sitting once on a very large dam wall at a place called Impala, not too far from here, and an elephant had died, seemingly of natural causes, down below the dam wall. And so we could get right above the herd without kind of interfering with them, without being too close to them. And so they reacted. Well, they didn't react to us at all, which was wonderful. And we sat as the darkness fell around us and watched as they picked up pieces of bone and put them on each other's heads. They sniffed around the carcass, and they just stood in silence for about an hour, just as the night sort of fell. And then, as darkness came, they wandered off very silently into the bush. It was tremendously moving. And I remember I was a young guide at the time, and one of the more senior guys was there. And when you're a young guide, you want to give information the whole time and talk about what's happening. And I remember him saying, just shh, just be quiet and listen. And it was a really great example of allowing nature to talk for itself. Truly moving experience of watching these elephants very clearly in some state of emotional sadness. I wouldn't say distress, but I would definitely say some kind of emotional, heightened emotional sense of sadness. Let's just move a little bit, I think. Again, I just don't want to make any noise. They're being so confiding. Of course, just starting this the recalcitrant old bat that is Wendy is going to result in noise. We're going to go around this way. Gabby, a nice one. How long does it take for an elephant's tusks to fully grow? Gabby, the answer is until it dies. They keep growing until the elephant dies. But they erupt at roughly, I think it's 18 months on a bull and maybe a little bit later on a cow. And then they keep growing until the elephant shakes off this mortal coil. They will stop growing fast, you know. I mean, I'm sure the growth rate will change, but basically, until the day they die, those tusks will get slightly bigger and bigger. And especially those massive old bulls that you see with those huge tusks. But so no further sign or sound of the elephants, at least of the lions. We're going to sit here a little bit longer, but while we do, let's head across to Jamie. She's got a scavenger.
Not the apex predator I was looking for, but one very full-bellied and very clearly female hyena that's been lying in the mud. The reason I say she's very clearly female, I can see distended nipples, so it could well be one of the mothers of our cubs. Let's see if we can catch up with her. A little bit more skittish than I expected. And I think this is probably the hyena that's been walking down the road and tricking me into believing that her tracks are the lions. Where are you off to, hyena? What do you know that we don't? So when lions call like that, hyenas are quite often in the area and exploring. I'm not sure where that dead aardvark was that James found yesterday. I think we are somewhere fairly close to that vicinity. If it is a hyena following the calls of a lion, it could be that my theory was correct about them having a kill. James said that they were not looking hugely full-bellied yesterday. They still looked as though they might be looking for something to eat. As hyenas moving very rapidly through the bush. I'm not going to follow her off-road. I'm going to loop around to see if I can't catch up on the other side. However, she seems to have disappeared from our view. Well, this must be where the dead ark was. I think, somewhere in this vicinity. I'm just looking at those vultures in there.
Good morning, mobile station. Road and update, please.
There's some vultures there. Now that could just be when they're sitting in dead trees like that. That could be just that they are resting for the evening. They have to wait for the temperatures to heat up before they can take off and utilize the hot air currents to head out in search of food. It's just the three of them. What we're really looking for is vultures in leafy trees. They prefer the dead trees so that they don't have to get entangled in foliage whenever they do decide to take off. I'm going to continue on with my search for these lions. I'm certain we're going to find them somewhere in this area. We know that they're on Juma. While I do that, I believe that James has repositioned to try and get a better look at those ellies. So let's pop back onto his vehicle and I'll continue the search.
So there you go, a brilliant example of winter forage eating. She's just twisting that branch through her very large crushing molars and skillfully with her tongue manipulating it, and she's taking the outer layer of bark off there. And that's some of the last, basically some of the last nutrition that's available out here. She's just listening to my voice. I obviously was speaking a bit more loudly than I was before. There we go. Very nice update or comment from a new viewer called the Plant Jedi. I always think we've heard it all, but we never have. The Plant Jedi, you say you love elephants, and if you look in their eyes, look at that. There's something just so touching about it. Absolutely. Look at that chestnut red eye. Isn't that wonderful? They say that when you look into an animal's eyes, you can kind of get a sense of what they feel and what they think. I'm not convinced that's true. I think you get a sense from their whole kind of being, the energy that they put out, that they're kind of exactly the same way as you get a sense of peace or anger from people before you've even met them. Listen. Lions calling. Way to the south. That cannot be the same group that we heard calling earlier. But maybe this group will respond. You definitely won't be able to hear them from where you are. But maybe the group that was calling around here will now respond just before it gets properly light. Jamie is hailing me on the radio. Go ahead. Junction, Central Road, and Drakensberger, like sort of a few meters to the south. Just head east into the block on the tracks there. Jamie's trying to find the aardvark that met its end and that we pulled out of the ground yesterday. Good luck to her. She's in for a stinky time. So like I was saying, a lot of people say, well, if you see a lion, should you not look in its eyes? Because, you know, we know with domestic dogs, if you look at it in its eye and it's an angry dog, it will come for you. And the answer is that I've stared long and hard into many lions' eyes, and they don't react in the slightest. Their mood is transferred by many other kinds of signs, the flicking tail, the movement of the ears, and just a general vibe that you can pick up immediately if you're vaguely in tune. And these elephants especially I think are particularly good at letting us know how they feel. Hello, Aaron in New Zealand. You want to know at what time of the year we see the most elephants. Aaron, it varies quite a lot, you know. There's a little one here. And there are quite a few others I can hear breaking trees off to the right-hand side. Aaron, it really depends on where the water is. We've seen lots at this time of the year now because the water is concentrated, they need water. I think a lot of elephants are coming out of the Kruger Park at the moment, coming into the area to see if they can find water and find a bit of grazing. There's been a lot more rain this side of the Greater Kruger National Park than there has in the east. And so I think we're going to get more and more, a greater and greater influx of elephants unless there is a major sort of downpour in the eastern sectors of the Kruger Park. So you can't really say seasonally when there will be more. The herds will be more concentrated during the dry season, but now we're in a drought, of course, and so while normally elephant herds at this time of the year would be quite dissipated because the water would be dissipated, that's not the case at this year because of the drought, and so there are lots of elephants around. But they will move en masse, and it's almost completely unpredictable. I mean, about a week ago, there was an elephant in sight. You couldn't find one. Now they're absolutely everywhere. That situation won't last forever, obviously, and so it's actually really difficult to predict when they're going to be here and when the sort of most abundant time for elephants is. Let's move on just down the road here. I think we might pick up the rest of the herd, and that'll be quite interesting. You want to know if elephants are normally solitary. Kimber, they are not. They are highly, highly social animals. Females especially, a bit like our own species really, females especially will always live in a herd of related females. So, I mean, it really is not unlike a sort of Stone Age human village where you'll have, in fact it is very distinct, but I'll explain that later. But basically what you have is a group of related females, often siblings, often sort of cousins. We're going to leave these two. There are a whole lot more crossing the road up in front of us. And they will live together in a herd, and that will be led by the oldest and possibly largest female. So that's what happens within the herds. And then the bulls do live on their own. The older the bull is, the more likely he is to be on his own. The young bulls will be tossed out of the herd when they're about 17 or 18 years, and that's normally by the matriarch because they start to course with testosterone, and so they become quite bully-like, and they bully the little ones, and they become a pain. And so they get tossed out. They'll live in small bachelor groups until they get even bigger, and then they kind of spend more and more time alone in the bush. But they're highly social with a highly complex social structure within the herds. Nice one, Kimber, thank you. Still not a track of a lion. Yeah, lots of elephants here. Hello, Sabrina. You're 12 years old, and you want to know if elephants can have eyes that are any other color than brown. Sabrina, no, I don't believe they can. I wouldn't say it's impossible, just because I haven't seen it, but I certainly haven't ever seen an elephant that has got colors other than brown. A couple of Impala moving in the background. Another large one there. We're going to move a little bit forward. Now, Marco, you're in New Jersey, and you're asking about the history of elephants. Very interesting history of elephants, and you want to know, are they descended from woolly mammoths? No, I don't think they're descended directly from woolly mammoths. I think that they shared a common ancestor with woolly mammoths. And while the one ancestor went off into the northern parts of the world, especially during the last ice age, and developed a particularly furry skin, as you say correctly, to deal with the climate, the closely related ancestors or cousins of the elephants would have come down to warmer climes and had much thinner. I'm just watching through there. Some Impala running through here. And, oh, okay, it's the elephants that's chasing the Impala. Watch here, Dave. The two Impala coming running through here, and there's a young bull that's chasing them. There he is. You can just see him on the left-hand side of your frame. I thought maybe he was... maybe he had found a predator that he was chasing, but he was just irritated with the Impala. So, common ancestor for mammoths and elephants, and one lot would have gone off to the north during the last ice age, needed the fur. One lot would have come south, didn't need the fur, and that's how basically elephants here do not have any fur on them. They do have some hair, but very little. Nice question, that. Remember, when we talk about things like this, when we talk about the evolution of one species and the relationship of one species to another, especially when we talk about, for example, human beings, and they talk about our nearest relatives being chimpanzees. We did not evolve from chimpanzees. We had a common ancestor with chimpanzees. Now, the same goes for elephants and mammoths, where you have a situation that one did not evolve from the other, but they had a common ancestor, which would have diverged into 2 or 3 different species, which then became the mammoths and the elephants. Michelle, as we watch a modestly tusked elephant walking across the road there, you're in New Jersey, and you'd like to know that those tusks would be eaten by hyenas. No, Michelle, not even a hyena would get through a tusk, and a tusk is a tooth, of course. It is no different from a tooth. It's also very, very hard. It's harder than bone, and there's no marrow in it, so there would be no point in a hyena biting through it. Remember, bone is quite digestible, but teeth aren't. And often you will find if a hyena finds a very small animal, it'll eat everything. So it'll eat the skull, say a small steenbok or something like that. But the teeth and the hair will actually come out in the feces, so it's indigestible. Whatever the teeth are made of is completely indigestible. Let's drive a little further forward. Right, apparently there's a great deal of alarm calling at Juma Dam. I think it's worth going down there, especially as we haven't found any further tracks. So we're going to leave these elephants for now. I think they're grazing off towards Treehouse Dam. Let's go and have a look at Juma Dam and see what is causing the Impalas such consternation. Perhaps a lion, perhaps a leopard, perhaps they're just irritated with each other. So you're going to stick with us. Jamie is off the vehicle at the moment trying to find the dead aardvark. Tracking a dead aardvark is a wonderful dawn activity to engage in. But it's just so rare, so it's worth doing. Warthogs scattering to the left-hand side. We're not going to worry about them. Sorry, chaps, to give you a fright this early in the morning for your breakfast, for your coffee. Just watching for tracks all the way that we go, hoping that the lions haven't crossed south of here. I don't see any. I'm not sure where the update of Impala going crazy around the Juma Dam came from, so Kirsten, maybe you'd like to tell me. From Kevin Catfish, thank you. Thank you, Kevin Catfish. Kevin Catfish gives us lots of updates from that camera. It's extremely helpful. Thank you, Kevin. Now, what we must be very aware of over the next little while is the fact that the impala are coming into the rut. So often they will go crazy, but often it will be a fighting noise. And there is a subtle difference between an impala's alarm call and its noise and its sort of fighting noise. And it'll make a very similar kind of roaring snort when it's fighting to the much shorter, more punchy sort of snort that it makes when it's alarming. So when it alarms, it goes. And when it's fighting, it just does a longer version of the same thing. These guys look pretty chilled out, well, other than the fact that they were set upon by Wendy doing 100 miles an hour. Michelle in New Jersey, you want to know if we have to watch out for sort of testosterone-crazed impala running out in front of the vehicles like you do with your deer. Not really during the day, no, but at night, yeah. At night, you've got to be very careful about driving around with lights on that blind animals. And I think that's probably very similar to the situation that you have with the deer in the United States. Right, we are now very close to the Juma Dam. We're going to keep an eye out. We're on quarantine clearings again. Off to the right-hand side of your screen is the Juma Dam, so we'll head down there. Then we'll have a listen. I want to sort of gather enough momentum so we can go around the corner and then switch off and listen as we move. Many birds. Teresa, you say the impala are just barking. Are they still barking? I can see them there. They look to be having a. They look to be having a drink at the moment. I don't think they're in a state of panic. No. These guys are chilled to the max, as it were. I suspect. Stop and listen here. That is a massive, massive herd of impala. I suspect it was males having a fight, maybe. There is a squirrel alarm calling quietly, going chip, 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 chip. I'll show you a picture of him. These impala do not look like they've been set upon by a predator. I suspect quite strongly it was the males having a bit of a rut. That's it. I walked past here, or a leopard that walked past here, and no. I can see what the squirrels are alarming at, Dave. If you look straight ahead of us there, you can see that pale form Wahlbergs on the dead tree looking over the dam. You might just be able to hear the squirrel going chip, 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 chip. But the impala wouldn't alarm call at a little eagle like that. Our smallest eagle. I'll try and get a bit closer. We'll just keep listening. You might hear something else. Like I say, it's possible that a predator may have just sort of popped up onto the dam wall and walked away or something like that. Check for tracks. It's a really nice shot, I think, of that Wahlbergs eagle. So all is complete peace at the moment. what I think we'll do is just drive along the dam wall and see if there isn't anything the other side. But while we do that, let's head across to Jamie. I don't know if she's found her quarry yet, but let's go and find out.
I've been following up on probably what equates to about 40 vultures, all sitting in the trees around this block. It's exactly where James found that dead aardvark. And from what I can tell, there's almost absolutely nothing left of that particular animal. I think the vultures have pretty much finished it off. The hyena was on his way to following those vultures, trying to figure out what they were so interested in. And if there was anything left when the vultures were finished, that hyena will certainly make sure that there's not much left now. Amazing how that works and how little goes to waste in the bush. I think almost that entire aardvark has been consumed pretty much in the space of the early hours of this morning or in the late hours of last night. Jen B has suggested maybe with my history of aardvark burrows, perhaps that wasn't the wisest plan in the world. Jen B, of course, referring to the time, okay, 2 times, if I'm completely honest, that we were off-road in the block between Zoe's and Impala Road, and I found an aardvark burrow, and I found that aardvark burrow with my right rear tire, at which point the ground collapsed underneath me completely, leaving us up to our axle in dirt. And it took us about an hour and a half the first time, plus a rescue mission launched by Eugene in the Mahindra to actually pull us out as we watched Tingana walk away from us and the wheels spinning hopelessly in the dust. Jen, you'll be happy to know that most of that excursion was done on foot. I have learned something of a lesson from my previous experiences. I know that James was trying to creep closer and closer to that Wahlbergs eagle, so let's pop back over to him and have a look.
Look at that, everyone. It's so seldom that we manage to get this close to a Wahlbergs eagle. Now, you can't really see from the way you're looking, but he's only about 100 feet from us again, and sitting there watching us very carefully, his head turned almost 180 degrees, of course, which is an amazing adaptation that just about all birds have. And thinking about the move back up into equatorial Africa for the course of our winter, I don't believe that this couple, there's a couple of these 2 pale-form Wahlbergs that live around here, we know where their nest is, I don't believe that they've managed to breed this year, which I think is quite interesting. I haven't seen any obvious signs of a fledgling or a near fledgling in their little nest. But what's interesting is that this is not a big bird. This is not a large eagle. And I'm just going to get the exact measurement. I think they're about 1 foot long. No, they're a bit longer than that, actually. They're almost 2 feet. Really? Maybe 2 feet. Okay. Yeah, 2 feet long. 58 centimeters. Were a big male. A big female, sorry. The females, of course, are larger than the males. But certainly the smallest eagle that we get out here, if you exclude the booted eagle, which is much more unusual. Isn't that a wonderful picture? You can see his very obvious crest. You can see his reddish eyes, reddish-black eyes. And the squirrels just gently alarm calling to the behind us. They definitely will be affected by a Wahlbergs eagle. Wahlbergs eagle would love to eat a squirrel. Otherwise, they eat lots of reptiles, perhaps the odd bird, basically anything they can overpower, to be honest. Okay, let's move a little bit forward, because much as Jamie had yesterday evening, there is a giraffe just below the dam wall here, and well, I think we might be able to get a beautiful eye-level shot. I was very jealous when Louise was telling me yesterday evening about the eye-level shots they were getting of this giraffe. I was probably the same fellow. Don't panic, just stand still. How cool is that? It's a yellow-billed oxpecker there that he's just shaken off his head. That's the rare oxpecker for this area. Now let's watch. Is the giraffe picking leaves or is it eating those pods? Just watch carefully here. Now, I know this isn't the most interesting thing you'll ever learn in your life, but the red-billed oxpecker kind of combs through the skin. There are two yellow bills there. And the yellow-billed kind of pecks at the skin. So they have different feeding strategies, which means that they take probably different sizes of ticks. There, he's eating pods. So I suspect you'll find that that big black monkey thorn tree produces so many pods, largely because they get eaten so much. Very rich in protein they will be in comparison with the leaves. Always loving those. And I wonder if they don't, perhaps some of them have to go through the digestive system of a giraffe in order to germinate. Thing is, though, with a giraffe, unless the seed is minute, the process of ruminating, so he's chewing it once now, he's going to chew it again a little bit later today, that process may well crush the seeds completely. So I wonder if the sheer volume of pods that a tree like this makes isn't precisely in response to the fact that so many of them get eaten. And Tom in Dallas, a variation on an English idiom or cliche. The early oxpecker gets the tick, or the early bird gets the tick. Yes, I suppose it does. A tick being just about as delicious as a worm. Now, there are some grey go-away birds alarming. You saw, as the beautiful light popped through the clouds onto that giraffe's head, you saw him look up. But there are still impala wandering about there very comfortably indeed. So I don't know what on earth they were shouting at earlier on. But let's just have one more look at this giraffe. And then we'll press on. Put him there, beautifully backlit in the dawn. With an oxpecker perched beautifully. He's decided to come out into the open. As the sun came up, he thought, well, I know where the best point to warm myself will be, right on top here. Okay, we're going to fossick around here a little bit longer, see if we can't find some sign of what made those impala so upset. But I suspect it was just them having a fight. And then we'll head up towards Quarantine, where the last tracks of the Pride were, and see if we can get a direction from there. Until then, let's go and look at the scavenging birds with Jamie.
I keep touching on the subject of vultures and the fact that there are so many around. And what happens with vultures with their incredible eyesight is that as soon as they spot a couple of vultures descending from the thermals, and they can spot them at a radius of 50 kilometers or more, about 25 miles if they're up in the sky, they immediately start making their way into that area, even if it is a small carcass like the little aardvark that they've obviously gathered for. And then on cool mornings, they then settle down on the tops of dead trees and wait for the earth to warm up and the thermals to start moving through. But what's interesting here, and I'm going to call for the opinion of some of our expert birders, look at the vulture on the bottom. Now, to me, that looks very different to our usual white-backed vultures, but something is not quite right. I suspect it is a juvenile white-backed vulture. And the reason I say that it's a juvenile is the one major difference between, well, there's a couple of major differences between a white-backed and a Cape vulture. The one is the fact that a Cape vulture has a very pale eye. Now, it's difficult in this light and at this distance, but I don't think that this individual has a pale eye, but that could make it a juvenile. But have a look at the difference in color between the white-backed on the top and the Cape, or my suspected Cape at the bottom, and the row of dots just above the prime end of the primaries on the vulture. And I'll show you what I mean in a moment in my bird book. It's not impossible that we're seeing Cape vultures. I have seen them once or twice before. They usually are moved away from their usual haunts of rocky cliffs because that's where they tend to nest. They tend to be more mountainous-based vultures as opposed to the open savannas of the white-backed vultures. And one of the more endangered vulture species, so it will, if confirmed, and I'm fairly certain that it is, if confirmed, it's definitely a new one for quite a few of you to add to your budding bird lists. I know a lot of our viewers have been working on them. There you can see, look how clearly there's a color difference. There's also a size difference. Cape vultures are slightly larger. And the way that that one is sitting makes it a little bit more tricky because its wings are all hunched over. But I think that is considerably larger than the bird that is slightly closer to us and above it. I've seen Cape vultures here before when there was a buffalo kill in the Milwaukee drainage line, so they do cover enormous distances. A vulture can cover hundreds of kilometers in one day, soaring in that energy-efficient way on the thermals and the currents of the air. I know that they've done a lot of projects involving tracking, putting GPS trackers on the backs of vultures and monitoring their movements. And if our buddy there would just shift his wings slightly, we could have a look and see if he's got a tag around his ankle. The Endangered Wildlife Trust often tags vultures as a way of helping sort of citizens and guides assist them in monitoring the population and monitoring their movements. So if you see a vulture with a tag, it's always good to report that, even if it's just to, for example, if you're in Kruger, even if it's just to the gate authorities. And I think if I try and sneak any closer, these two are going to take off. But that's exciting stuff. I'm pretty sure that's a first for most of you. I suspect it is a juvenile Cape vulture. You guys are welcome to correct me if you think I'm wrong. I don't think I am, though. There we go. Look at that white belly. No, it's definitely a Cape vulture. As soon as he moved like that, it was a nice way for us to just have a look. Awesome. The reason that I went to just double-check that area is because there were a lot of vultures sitting in marula trees with leaves. I started talking about that earlier. Most of our regular viewers are familiar with the concept that vultures rest in dead trees because it's easier for them, but that when there is a kill or something that they want to get to on the ground, then they will actually then move into the leafy trees and run the risk of getting caught or tangled up in the foliage. Right, this is the white-backed vulture. This is the typical vulture that we see on a day-to-day basis. So, fairly scruffy-looking bird. That's the juvenile, that's the adult with a dark eye. And not much of a noticeable color difference between the sort of the top part of the wings and the bottom half, or at least not as obvious as it is in the Cape. If we go down a little bit and we have a look at the Cape vulture, it is slightly larger, but we might not be seeing such a pronounced size difference because it is a juvenile. Just have a look at the difference in coloration. There's those dots that I was talking about that run along the top of the primary wing feathers. And you can sort of see the clear difference in the lightness of the feathers. The only thing that's missing is the pale eye. It looks, to me, it looks very similar. That's the juvenile with a dark eye. So it might not be as pronounced. It might also be the reason why we're not seeing the clearer difference in size. Just want to check one more bird, which I think might be on the other side. That is, no, it's definitely not a white-headed vulture. So we are certainly looking at the Cape vulture. Now, there was a time in South Africa where the population crashed to, I believe, less than 60 individuals. This was about 40 or so years ago. They have many conservation industries have put considerable effort into re-establishing them as a surviving population. They're not quite as, definitely far more rare to see than the white-backed vulture. Now, for our white-backed vulture, in terms of wingspan, in answer to Kathy's question, they stand just under a meter in height, so just under 3 feet in height. In terms of wingspan, for white-backed vultures, it is about, if I remember correctly, it's about 1.5 odd meters. I'm just trying to think. That would put it at just about 4 or so feet. The white-backed is a little bit larger. I'm just checking to see if the answer is not in my book. The white-backed, I think, comes close to 2 meters, so close to 6 feet. They are very, very large birds. I think we're just seeing the distinction slightly less so. Yeah, so white-backed vulture, about 6 to 7 feet. I remember I've got a photo somewhere of me standing next to an outline of a white-backed vulture with outstretched wings. I'll see if I can find it and I'll pop it up on social media and you'll be able to see. But it was extended way past the reach of my arms at full extension. White-backed is slightly smaller. Sorry, I was actually mistaken. It's even larger than I thought. It's larger than 2 meters. It's up to 7 to 8 feet, so about 2.2, 2.3 meters. There we go, beautifully outstretched. Now we just need this white-back to join, this Cape vulture to join us. And if we can get a glance underneath, oh, not flying, just defecating. The other thing that we noticed was a really, really sweet smell around where the vultures had been settling for the night. It's this combination of carrion smell plus a sweetness to it. It's a very typical scent of vulture presence in an area, a combination of their bodily odor and the odor of their defecation. But it can be quite interesting if you come across a sign like that where you've got lots of white splodges underneath a tree. You'll be able to read and interpret the signs and know that there were vultures roosting there at some point. Now, this Cape vulture has arrived probably too late to have access to the meal. If he did get there in time, he would have been able to outcompete the white-backed vultures. They are larger, they are much more aggressive at kills and able to throw their weight around, so he would have been able to get access to it. Now, as soon as it starts to heat up, and it's apparently going to reach far up to close to 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 40 degrees centigrade today. So he'll have a chance and an opportunity to jump on board with those thermals and start heading back towards the mountainous regions. We're quite close to the Drakensberg. In a straight line, we're probably about 100 kilometers away. Well done, Marilyn. Marilyn, who is watching in Montana, has been working on her bird list, and apparently Cape vulture is a new bird for her, taking her all the way up to 135. For new viewers that are joining us for the first time, we always encourage our viewers to start a bird list. It doesn't have to be birds, although birds is the one that we usually focus on. You can start a reptiles list, you can start a mammals list. It's just a great way of keeping track. And you can take screenshots and document it. You can almost build up your own little bird list. And if you ever have a chance to come and visit Africa, then you'll have a very, very firm head start on your birding excursions. You'll be able to dazzle and impress the locals with your birding knowledge. On my latest Kruger trip, we actually all stopped because there was a row of cars there were probably about 14 or so vehicles all stopped, and immediately you start thinking something like a lion or a leopard, a high-profile sighting. And it was amazing. And then we saw all of the enormous lenses that were sticking out of people's car windows. And as we drove past, every person was excitedly saying to us, "It's a broad-billed roller, it's a broad-billed roller." It's the one roller related to the European and the lilac-breasted roller that unfortunately you're very unlikely to see in the Sabi Sands and be able to add to your bird lists. But you never know when things start to expand. Maybe when we start moving further to the east, we might start seeing them more and more. Very beautiful little bird, very colourful. All right, Vulture, I'm going to leave you now. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm going to find the immobilizer. And while I attempt to get the angle exactly right for Rusty's immobilizer, Curtis was wondering a little bit about the vulture mating activity and breeding activity. Curtis, they're interesting things, vultures. So in theory, they form monogamous pairs that stay together for life. They nest in the top of knob thorns. Hey, I got it right. I got the angle right. And they breed about once a year, probably around August that they start to lay their eggs. And by this time of the year, the chicks are starting to be fully fledged and moving out of the nest. And we have monitored a couple of the birds' nests in the region, or vultures' nests in the regions. There was one on Arethusa that we had a nice close look at before it got too dense. Very good fly. Definitely Cape. Awesome. Confirmed Cape Vulture. On his way. He'll find another tree to settle in. In fact, I think that's exactly what he's done now. He's found another tree to settle in. And he'll wait for the temperatures to heat up. But back to Curtis's question on vulture mating activities, because it's so interesting and we've got such a nice new vulture species for us to see. I'm quite excited about that. It's the second Cape vulture I've seen on Juma. Curtis, the one thing I've noticed in situations like this, where you've got a whole load of vultures moving about in an area, and I saw it one very memorable occasion with a giraffe carcass, where they were all sitting in trees waiting for the opportunity to, when the lions moved off, to come down and feed. And there was one female, from what I could tell, sitting in a tree with about 6 males. And with much screeching involved, they would just jump down, mate with her, and move off. And as soon as one moved off, the next one would come down and do exactly the same thing. And she mated in that tree while I was sitting in a half an hour, no, it was probably about an hour time period watching the vultures. She must have mated about 8 to 9 times in that time period. It was fascinating to witness. I had no idea up until that point that they actually did something like that. I always knew of them living in monogamous pairs. So monogamy with birds is not always the strictest of concepts. They will live together like our Wahlbergs eagles. They will live together, they will build a nest together, and they will raise a chick together. But I do wonder about the paternity of those chicks, because monogamy in birds doesn't necessarily mean that they won't mate with another bird or another male of that species. Going to be, hopefully they stick around. There we go. Quite possibly a new one for our new viewers. A white-crested helmet shrike. There's 2 different helmet shrikes that we get in this area. One is Retz's, which is far more rare. Oh, living together in little groups. Got the most fascinating feathers around those bright yellow eyes. Try and get another view of them. Sorry, it was white-crowned. I think I said white. No, it is white-crested. I'm having a moment because there's the southern white-crowned shrike and the white-crested helmet shrike. That's what it is, white-crested helmet shrike. If we can get one more view. Come on, guys. No, they're just moving constantly ahead of us. Hello, Impala. Time. There's one. That's probably the clearest view we'll get. There we go. That bright yellow eye. Fascinating grey face. Also, fairly monogamous in terms of their social structure, but they're what's known as cooperative breeders. So the previous offspring will stick around and actually assist their parents with the raising of the next set of chicks. Nice to see. So what looks like a red-headed weaver that's coming out of its breeding plumage. It's the one sitting on the top of that tree. Oh, no. Gone, disappeared into the weeping wattle. A little bit of a bird feeding party here. I chatted to Gracie about that yesterday. Oh, where is it gone?
Kudu alarm talking in the block between.
Sorry, I'm just listening to James.
And quarantine. I'm going to follow up the tracks of the tide from this morning. We're heading in that direction this morning.
James is just updating everybody on the Game Drive channel that there are Kudu alarm calls in the block around Juma Dam, which could have been what sparked those Impala alarm calls and then the go-away birds calling, rather than the presence of rutting Impala. He did have the tracks of the lions heading in that direction. I think we're going to head across and assist him that way. But why I was chuckling a little bit was because he got quite excited in terms of giving that Game Drive update, and he was mixing up the word kudu with the word karula, and he kept saying there's Karula's alarm calling in the block. It is kudu. Okay. Well, we've very thoroughly checked this particular area, the eastern section of Juma. There's no tracks coming through here, so I'm going to head back further towards the west and give James a hand there. Obviously, there was an update as well about Karula, which was clearly where James's mind was whirring to. That she was on Twin Dams Road. We're just going to give her a little bit of space, depending. We don't know now where she has moved her cubs to, which particular drainage line. So it's not for us worth racing off to try and find her, only to stop and for her to vanish into a drainage line. We're definitely not going to be following her in there. And just an update on that score. The den site, if it is established, will be zoned for another 4 weeks before we reevaluate exactly how it's going to be approached or handled. But still such thrilling news that she is safely doing what she does best. Now I wonder, I'm just going to get hold of James and find out exactly where those Karula alarm calls were. Kudu alarm calls. James for Jamie. Sorry, can you just confirm the position of those alarm calls?
Between quarantine, Fins and Zaid.
Copy that, thank you. So exactly somewhere in between along that western edge of quarantine. I'm still fairly far away from that region, so we'll make our way slowly and see what else we can find you along the way. Aegis was wondering, would the lions not return to where they were sleeping, which is essentially where I am now, to where they were sleeping last night. And Angel, it's a difficult one. Lions can be unpredictable. Generally not, though. When they tend to pick a direction, they tend to go in that direction and then go sleep in the next spot that they choose. So whilst it's not impossible, it was unlikely. The reason that I came through this way to check was just to make sure that there was no, excuse me, that there was no evidence that they'd killed anything en route to that particular region. So it's not impossible. Generally, you find that when lions tend to be the most stagnant around an area, so when they tend to be seen in an area fairly regularly, there's a couple of reasons. One, they've got some big kills, or they're lurking around a dam waiting for animals to come and drink. Two, they're mating. Mating lions tend not to exert too much energy and movement. They've got far more, they've got other things occupying their attention. Or three, they've got cubs in the region. With the Nkuhumas, none of them are showing signs of pregnancy yet. I'm going to race around and head down to help James. In the meantime, let's find out how his following of those alarm calls is going.
Now we are over here, everybody, because we were parked looking at a Coqui Franklin, and we then heard the alarmed voices of a herd of kudu going somewhere off to the left-hand side of the vehicle here. I'm pretty sure that they're alarming at the lions. They've stopped alarming now, which either means that they've run away, B, been eaten, or C, the lions have just moved on from where they were. I'm going with the latter at this stage. Now, we found the lions on this road before, heading sort of this direction. So I'm just going to ease my way down the road, and then if nothing comes out, we might have to go in there on foot and have a look. See if we can find anything. You see, I think we're too far south now from where the alarms were, but if the pride was moving, which I suspect it may well have been, then they would probably pop out along here. So we'll watch the road for tracks, we'll watch the bush for signs of tawny fur moving stealthily through. We will try not to get frustrated when things don't happen our way immediately. Just go to the bottom of this road, turn around, come back again, then we'll stop and listen, and then we'll maybe think about making a foray actually into the block. So I don't see any tracks, I can't hear any further alarm calls. I suspect this little pride is moving though. And the best thing to do, of course, is check on game paths, check where they come out of the blocks, because often the lions will use them. I don't think they would have come this far south. Let's do a quick turn around here. We'll turn around at Scott's bush baby's nest. Maybe there'll be a bush baby there. Just stop and listen quickly. There is a bush baby nest in this tree here, David. There's a hole. Where is it? Is it this one? I can't actually see the hole anymore. Okay? It's not this tree. David says it's not this tree. I thought we'd found the tree before. Cash. I think it changes every time we come past here. Let's go back up here. Is it oh, there it is. It's there. I'm just going to switch off and we'll listen here. Lions are still calling to the far east, I'm hearing on the radio, so maybe these guys will respond. There's a hole in this tree in which a bush baby lives. course, we had our little bush baby in camp yesterday, which was marvelously fun. There. He doesn't live there. We're a bit far for him to come. Kirsten is finally agreeing that this is in fact the hole. Right, let's carry on. Now, bush babies, just interestingly, I find the subject of of any kind of mammal metabolism and physiology really interesting, because a bush baby is obviously a very small animal, and it eats very concentrated food in the form of tree gum or insects in order to maintain its very high metabolic rate. And during the course of the day, they go into their nests like that, and they go into torpor. Now, what that means is they basically shut down. They allow their body temperatures to drop below what you and I would consider normal. And what that means is that when you wake them up, you can actually pick them up. They don't run away because they can't run away. It takes a while for their metabolisms to fire up again before they're actually able to move properly. So you can pick a baby. If you find a nest during the day, you can actually pick a bush baby up. And that bush baby that we saw yesterday in camp was very slow until it eventually kind of warmed up, and then it moved a bit faster. Kimber, speaking of bush babies, you want to know if we have lemurs here. We do not. Lemurs are endemic to Madagascar. Really interesting sort of example. I think the correct term would be of island biogeography, where animals on islands will develop specific sort of different kinds of animals will evolve on isolated islands. And I think the lemur of Madagascar is a brilliant example of that. They are related to bush babies in so much as we are. I mean, they're all primates, but they're not very closely related. A bush baby is more accurately known as a galago, or galago, if you like. I prefer the term galago, I don't know why. Lots of general game apparently at Juma Dam. We're not going to go back there for now. I'm just going to keep looking around here, see if the tracks of the lions don't pop out. But I think what I'm going to do is just do a little foray through this block on foot here. We're going to hand you back across to Jamie, and I will see you hopefully with a bit of luck.
Well, James goes for a little bumble about on foot to see if he can find those lions in the middle of the block. There we go. I've been desperately racking my brains trying to figure out exactly how the lions went from there to where James is without leaving any tracks, and the answer is they've actually come all the way up to Buffelshoek boundary. I'll show you if I can find a nice clear example. Not going to be the clearest in this light. How are we doing there, Jeandre? Let's just see what the tracks look like. There you go. Ooh, steady on, Rusty. Not hugely clear, but I'm going to jump off and I'll trace them for you to try and make it a little bit more obvious. Although the car seems to want to move of its own accord. So, Jeandre, if you start rolling backwards, you'll just have to come and save. You'll have to jump in and try and stop it. Oh, I'm very much still attached to the cables in the car. Now I'm attached to my earpiece. Now I'm wrapped around the door handle. There we go. We'll get there eventually. We find a nice tracing stick. Which one is the clearest for you, Jeandre? This one here? Yeah. Here we have their tracks. They're not that clear in this tracking light. But if we have a look, there is the back pad over here. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 toes. Okay, not the clearest drawing that you'll ever see. Moving up in this direction, fairly rapidly. I mean, the front foot is here, slightly rounder, a little bit bigger than the back track falling more elliptical just ahead of it, and marching up. The whole pride is marching up this road at a fair pace. Now, for new viewers, most of our regular viewers are very familiar with this concept, but for new viewers, identifying the difference between large cats, big cats, and dogs and hyenas. With big cats, they've got 3 lobes on the back of their pad. So if I exaggerate it, still not very clear, it's 1, 2, 3 in the part almost like the heel of their foot. Whereas with dogs and hyenas, it's 1 and 2. So they've only got 2 lobes at the back. Big cats have 3. With lions, you very, very seldom see claw marks. The only time that you will ever see a claw mark in a leopard or a lion track is when they are moving through thick mud or something where they need traction and where their track sinks deeply into the substrate. Oh my goodness, I really parked at an awkward angle here. There we go. Just turn this down a little bit. Right, so they decided to walk all the way onto Buffel's Hook boundary and then went west from there. Now, there was a stage where we didn't hear from the Nkuhumas for ages. They didn't make a peep. When we did see them, they were running scared and moving through the area as silently as possible. And that was when the Birmingham boys had first taken over and were causing a chaos amongst the ranks of the different prides. At this point, though, they've been mating fairly successfully with the Birmingham boys. Peace has sort of settled in, and all seems to be fairly well established. And now this brings us to the answer to Ava Brooks's question, which is, will the females ever call to the males and will they respond? And the answer is yes. When the lionesses roar like they were this morning, they are contacting the males. See, they crossed into Buffel's Hook here, which is interesting. They must have done a loop through Buffel's Hook and then gone down south. So yes, they will call and the males will answer. If a female is in estrus, she might be slightly more vocal about it. She might even actively seek out the males from the calls that they are making. And it just depends on what the males are doing at the time, whether or not they decide to follow the calls of the females. So sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. And I suspect that there is far more said in those contact calls than we realize. The Birmingham boys might, for example, be able to determine whether or not the Nkuhumas are roaring from a kill, or if they're just contact calling while they're on the move to announce where they are. If they are on a kill, the Birmingham boys, if they're in the vicinity, might decide to come and join them if they're feeling a little bit peckish. It very much depends on what's happening in the lines or the circumstances surrounding those calls. I mentioned that they were moving at a fair pace, and I judge that by looking at the tracks. And Debbie, who is asking a question on Twitter, Debbie wanted to know, can you tell how fast a lion is moving by their tracks? And the answer is yes, you can. So when a lion walks at a normal walking pace, so that standard casual walk that we often see them doing down a road, which can eat up the miles at a fairly rapid pace, that's their standard walk. When they do that, they do what's known as registering. So their back foot falls exactly where the front foot was. And they do that because it's the quietest way to walk. Makes sense? You're not disturbing as much if you're stepping where you've already stepped. When they start to speed up slightly, so when they're marching on a mission, as they get faster, their back track starts to move further and further and further in front of their front track. So they extend their strides ever so slightly. And from observation, and that's why I always like to, when I've seen an animal, physically seen the animal and the way that it's walking and the speed that it's walking at, I love to stop and then or go back and look at the way that the tracks have fallen. And once you've done that a few times, you can build a picture in your head of exactly how rapidly that animal was actually moving through the area. So it's an interesting one. I couldn't give you exact speeds, but if I could transmit that picture in my head as to how fast those lions were walking, I would say it was not much faster than their normal walking pace, but stepping it out ever so slightly. The difficulty, just to add a little bit of an extra complication to turn you all into master trackers, but the difficulty becomes on uphills and downhills. So they might be walking slightly faster on an uphill, but the distance doesn't seem as clear because they've got to put more effort into it. Jeandre has found something. Oh. That then jumped onto my nose. Come on. It's, now I think, is it on my hair, Jeandre? On the side of my face somewhere.
On your shoulder?
On my shoulder.
Oh, it's a bit too close to the camera.
Now it's on my face. How's that? Further?
Yeah, I'll go a bit further.
I haven't had a chance to have a good look at it, and due to my inability to actually look out of the corner of my eye, I can't tell you exactly what it is. I thought it was a katydid when I first saw it. It's some kind of grasshopper type thing. There's a subtle difference between katydids and grasshopper. I did notice the flash of green. I think it is a katydid. It's got slightly shorter antennae than your average grasshopper, from what I could see. This is a distinctly strange feeling as it crawls along my... Here we go. Oh, I've now got a double chin trying to look at it. Come on. Please don't jump. Here we go. Gently, gently. My new best friend. Does look a little bit like a little katydid. Look how incredible that camouflage is. That combination of brown along the body and then green on the legs. And those powerful, powerful... It's on my head, isn't it? There we go. My new closest friend. Don't go in there, buddy. You might never make your way out again. Don't do it. I found fruit chafers in my hair the next morning that have been there all night. I wouldn't try and vanish in there. It also hasn't been brushed this morning. Don't look too closely, everyone. You might see the odd grey hair, which I desperately try to get rid of, but they keep appearing. Here we go. The lengths we go to bring you the best wildlife images in the world. There we go. If ever any new viewers wanted proof that this is not scripted or planned, and that we never know what to expect, this is a very good example. You're going to get very stuck, Mr. Katydid, if you stick yourself in there.
Yeah, building a nest.
Building a nest, Jeandre says. Hopefully not. I would feel terrible. Should we try and remove it? Where is it? Oh. Come. Oh, that went better than expected. There's incredible jumping ability. So this little guy has shot from one end of the car to the other in one jump, or from my thumb to my face, a couple of times. The first time, which is why Jeandre and I were laughing so hard initially, it landed straight in the middle of my nose. But look at that. It's actually a really stunning little creature. Deborah, our armchair traveller, has said she doesn't care if it's a grasshopper, and that if it landed on her face, we would have heard her screaming from New York right across the country to Los Angeles, and quite possibly all the way here in Juma. Luckily, you get very used to insects landing on your face. so far my only major, and most of our regular viewers, it's probably one of the worst kept secrets out here. My worst is actually centipedes. Anything else, I'm absolutely 100% okay with them being around me. My worst injury ever inflicted by an insect was driving along, spotlighting, and one of the massive species of dung beetle hit me in the eye, sliced open my eyebrow with its wing casing, and gave me a black eye. Dung beetle was fine. It flew off quite happily, but everybody thought it was absolutely hilarious, especially when I walked out of my room the next day and I had a bruise, but I had a genuine black eye, all the way from my eyebrow down to my cheekbone. They thought that was very funny. Right, shall I relocate you to somewhere where you'd be more happy? Or do you want to go back to my hair? What do you think? What do you say, little thing? Little Katie did? Look, he's swaying from side to side. He's building up. He's thinking about it. The open cavity, the hemosyl of all insects. So essentially they don't really have lungs per se. They've got breathing tubes situated right throughout the body. I can actually see his little mandibles at work and little feelers underneath his head. And those short little antennae on the top. And what look like compound eyes. Difficult to see at this side. He's happy now. He's cleaning his feet, preparing for the next launch into my hair. All right, I'm going to relocate my new friend. As enjoyable as this has been, I'm going to relocate my new friend to a nice leafy pasture. Perhaps that sickle bush on my right would be the way to go. Let me go and pop him on there. Now don't jump back in. Don't jump. Oh, I'm still attached to cables. I'm fine. Nearly fell down, but that's okay. Come on. Doesn't want to leave me now. Come on. Oh, goodness. Trying to do this so that you can see his successful relocation. That's my thumb. There you go. See, there's a leaf. Look, it's a leaf. You'll be far more camouflaged on that, I promise. It's okay. Come on. Come on. Here we go. Goodness gracious. Sorry, buddy. It's nothing personal. It's not you. It's me. I just don't think it'll work. I don't think it'll work between us. There's just too large of a difference. Well, that was entertaining. Well spotted, Jeandre. It sparked a hugely entertaining moment. Right, where do we go from there? How do we top that? We're going to drive along and try not to mourn the ending of that brief relationship with the katydid. This, by the way, is where the lions came back onto Juma. I've just seen their tracks now when I jumped off to pop him on the sickle bush. He doesn't realize it, but he'll be better off without me. Onwards. Let's find other things. Oh. Should probably shut my door at the same time, lest I go tumbling out. And while I mourn the loss of my new friend and continue on trying to hold back the tears, let's find out how James's excursion on foot has gone.
Now, we've just come across these chaps, everybody, Kudu, and I wonder if this isn't the same herd that was alarm calling a little bit earlier. I have walked this block from end to end. Now, of course, you can't look everywhere. It's simply not possible. But I just don't think the lions are in there. I think if they are around, they are probably moving still. Anyway, those are the Kudu, and I don't know, there was a youngster a little bit that we saw the other side of the block. on its own. Maybe it was separated, and maybe that's why they were alarm calling. I'm at a bit of a loss. I didn't find any further tracks. I did hear some guinea fowl alarming back towards quarantine, so I think what we'll do is take a gentle drive around that way and see if we can't find any sign of a predator. Now, of course, we're assuming the lions could well have been knocked. Might have been a leopard, could have been Tingana, for example. The last time I saw him, he was around this area. And of course, I think you'll find that especially big male leopards like Tingana will be looking for little kudu. They're an ideal snack. Lots of meat for very little effort, if you can find them. So maybe he's around here somewhere. But otherwise, I had a very pleasant walk. I was walking with a large stick and feeling like a sort of shepherd of old. I'm not sure why I felt like that. It seems like a ridiculous thing to feel in the wilderness. And I saw some white-crested helmet shrikes, and they were alarm calling. Don't know what they were alarm calling at. I had a lovely sighting of a tawny eagle that was sitting in the top of a tree, and that's always an indication, or often an indication, of something that is being scavenged, of something dead around the place. But of course, a tawny eagle, when it isn't scavenging, has to be somewhere. They have to find somewhere to sit. So it's not always an indication that something has met its end close by. No, I certainly didn't find anything that had met its end anywhere near. So it goes with the difficult time of chasing predators, and it astounds me how often we wake up in the morning, hear them calling, and still struggle to find where they are. And often it's just a kind of random around the corner. Oh, there they are. Angels Aegis. If I'm reading the tone of your question correctly, Angels Aegis, you're admonishing me quite severely for going to the bush baby's nest during the day when we know that they are nocturnal. You're absolutely correct, they are nocturnal. It's only because when we go past it, it's just quite interesting to look at, and how maybe there will be one sticking its head out during the course of the early morning. But Angels Aegis, you're absolutely correct. Come the night time, that would be the best time to go and visit that little nest. We're going to go back towards quarantine, like I say, and see if we can't pick up at least a little track or two. Hello, Pirate Jack. I'm assuming you got your Twitter handle from Captain Jack. You want to know if we've ever considered microchipping the animals in order to make tracking them easier. For Pirate Jack, microchipping the animals will undoubtedly make this process much easier. We could probably, if we had the means, microchip all the animals of the area, have a screen on the front of the vehicle that would tell us precisely where they are at any time. That, of course, would remove all forms of romance surrounding what we do out here. It would remove the need for any kind of tracking. It would remove the surprise and joy of finding something around the corner. So if we were involved in a biological research project and the aim wasn't a sort of immersive wilderness experience of discovery, then that would be the way to do it. If we needed to be with those animals all day, every day, to be able to track their movements, then yes, completely that would be the way to go. But that's not what we're about. We're trying to observe nature in the least invasive manner. That's the kind of idea behind what we do out here, and indeed what all of the ecotourism lodges out here do. And also to have a kind of immersive wilderness experience where we do look at the trees and the birds and the insects, and sometimes that's all we'll see on a drive. And that's basically why we don't microchip the animals. Thank you, Captain Jack Sparrow. Jeandre, a very nice comment that I haven't even thought about or noticed. This clearing that we're driving through here is often filled with wildebeest. And you saying we haven't seen any for a while. Jared, you're absolutely correct, we haven't. Where they are, I think, is probably on Torchwood. I heard reports last night, not Torchwood, on Buffelshoek. I heard reports last night of lots of wildebeest there on Buffelshoek. So I suspect our herd moved up there, probably because they had a bit more rain than we did. They will absolutely move according to grazing, and obviously the little ones are able to move at the moment, so they will quite possibly have headed up towards Buffelshoek, where there's abundant water and a little bit more grazing. So I think, Jared, that's where they are. This is where we originally saw the little baby kudu that was standing on its own just after, there are a whole lot more in there, just after we had the alarm calling. And we'll see if we can get a view of those, and we'll just stop here and have another listen. I walked almost this far. There is a whole nursery group of kudus. The adults have clearly left them there to look after themselves while they perhaps go and have a drink. Little white tails so they can follow each other through the thick bush. But I don't know what's going on. What were they shouting at? Right in there. Then some guinea fowl alarm calling just over there while I was in the block over here. So let's pop across there and see if we can spot what they were shouting at. Monkey Man, a nice one about birds. You're in Australia, and you want to know what kind of waterfowl we can find here on Juma. Well, at the moment, Monkey Man, not a great deal, because there isn't much standing water. Certainly around the little pans that we get here, you're not going to find a great deal of waterfowl. In terms of ducks and geese that we might find in an abundant year of rain, obviously the most clearly obvious is the Egyptian goose, abundant resident. We might find a comb duck, used to be called a knob-billed duck. Very rare occasions, I suppose, you might find a pygmy goose. I've seen one in this area. Then you'd find yellow-billed ducks sometimes. You certainly find them up in the big dams around Buffelshoek. White-faced whistling duck, they'd be quite common. You may, in the river, every so often find African black duck. Those would be the major ones that you'd find out here. Oh, you'd get the grebes as well. Little grebe, dabchick as it used to be called. You'd find them. Knob-billed coot, possibly. It's quite a nice word to say in the morning, don't you think, David? Knob-billed coot. Knob-billed coot. Just trying to think of any others that we might find here. Ducks and goose-wise. You might find a spur-wing goose. Spur-wing geese will come through here every so often. They're enormous birds with a big spur on the wing, and that's why they're called spur-wing geese, obviously. And waterfowl. I think those are the major ones, Monkey Man. Then because, of course, that we know that waterfowl are often quite migratory, they like to move about a bit, it's quite possible that you could find vagrants. So, I mean, we have had fulvous ducks in the area every so often. What else? Probably the odd teal has popped through here. Oh, let us keep an eye out. We're now on the western fringes of quarantine clearings. Tracks of hyenas. Oh, hello, Anna. Not a silly question at all. Please don't ever think that any question is silly. You want to know if birds have a sense of smell? They do, very good sense of smell. It varies, of course, from bird group to bird group. The most obvious group that smells very well, it smells carcasses, and not in fact the vultures, but the storks. The storks have got a very advanced sense of smell. The marabou stork, probably the most sensitive nose. They do rely largely on sight, though, the birds out here. But yes, they do have a sense of smell, absolutely. And the New World vultures, which we know about, are completely dependent on their sense of smell. So condors and the buzzards of North America will use their sense of smell to find dead and dying meat. Ooh, Jamie's got something very balletic to show you.
Unfortunately, not the best view. We're very far away from him. But a male Impala doing his "I'm bigger than you" dance. I'm sure there must be a better name for it. Essentially, pilo-erection, so erecting the fur along the back of his back and his tail, and doing the most intimidating slow dance. Somewhere around there is another male Impala, almost definitely doing the same thing. What they're doing is known as lateral presentation. So presenting a side view to each other and making them trying to make themselves look as big and scary as possible in order to intimidate the other male, and rather than having to come to physical blows. Oh, slow dance. They almost seem to move in slow motion, and I personally find them so hard to take seriously when they do this. Oh, there we go. There's the other one on the right of your screens, hidden in the vegetation. And I'm sorry, I can't get you a better view than this. We'll keep watching them. That long-legged slow dance. I'm dancing slower. No, I'm dancing slower. Highly entertaining to watch. All that we can really see is the tufts of white along the ridges of their backs. Fascinating to witness, though. And that all of that coloration is for a purpose. That white is to emphasize just how large they can make themselves look. And most animals will do this. Most animals have a way of displaying to another male rather than, or trying to avoid the possibility of injury until the very last point. So they could dance and dance like this for hours and only really come to actually physically fight if there's a female somewhere in the region in estrus. At the moment, though, this is pure posturing. I'm bigger than you. Not sure how the slow dance comes into it, but it is always highly entertaining to witness. I once saw, you don't often get to see Impala fights. I've seen it happen once or twice, really seriously coming to blows, and that was after hours of this dancing performance. And then a female, obviously clearly an estrus, walked through, and the two males just couldn't determine who was bigger. And they went at it went into a serious physical fight, joined then by a third large male. The most entertaining aspect of that particular sighting, I'll try and move back. I don't think we're going to get another good view, but I'll try and move back. The most entertaining aspect of that particular sighting was the fact that the three males were so distracted with fighting each other that a younger male, a tiny male about half the size, was able to sneak in and eventually turned out to be the one who got to mate with that female. And it just goes to show sometimes brain over brawn really helps. Oh, this is such a pity. I don't think this is going to help. I wish they'd decide to come out into the open. That's not really much better, or better at all, actually. As you can see him presenting his horns. Oops, sorry, let me take my foot off the brake. That was me, not Jeandre. Head lowered, as if to say I'm preparing for battle. And I'm sure most of our regular viewers are now automatically thinking of the amazing rendition of this dance that James and Brent did around Fireside Chat. I have seen the video now. It was hugely entertaining. I'm not sure who won that dance-off. And I think we'll give them both very high scores for style and presentation. And new viewers, I'm sure, would love to see that video. So for our regular viewers who might have access to it, if you don't mind just providing a link to it for new viewers, and just keep an eye on Twitter. I'm sure you'll see that video pop up. Not the best view we've ever had. But since we're here and we have stopped, I wanted to just make a correction. I had to refer to my insect book to try and figure out exactly where my friend came from that decided to join me in my hair. And the closest I've come to in conclusion, and I'm sorry, I mixed up katydids in terms of the length of their antenna with grasshoppers. I think this is the closest we're going to get to. There are so many different variations of species, but this one is about the right size for my new friend. And it falls under a list of small grasshoppers. Doesn't have a common name, so I'm actually going to show you the name itself. Thuricles, how would we pronounce that? Yeah, Thuricles, I would say. I have never regretted my lack of a Latin education until I started working in the bush and dealing with Latin names. But that seems to be about right, with the green legs, the short antenna, and those powerful jumping legs, and the slightly browner body. It's pretty close, not exactly, but it's pretty close to what we were looking at. So falling under the family, Thuriclidae family. So if I stand corrected, it was a grasshopper and not a katydid. I just did a quick bit of research to double check exactly what it was. The grasshoppers and katydids actually have the long antenna. Mixed that up slightly. I mentioned earlier, I'm still trying to get you a good view, but unfortunately they're just too far away and just too in dense vegetation for us to really... Oh, there is a lady there watching them go. I'm sure... Oh, she's not even interested. She's just having her breakfast. I mentioned that with most animals, they will attempt to avoid conflict where at all possible. The question that came through from Anna Marie was whether or not Kudu do something similar to our slow Inyala dance. They do to a degree. They still do what's known as lateral presentation. So they'll walk sideways, because obviously that sideways view for antelope is their biggest side. They present their biggest side to their opponent. So they will do lateral presentation. Rhino also do it. And probably bushbuck do as well, but they just don't do it to the same extent that Nyala do that slow dance. Never fear, we shall find them. We see it on a fairly regular basis, so we will be able to view a slightly better view for you at some point. Thank you very much to Justin, who posted the video of James and Brent doing the Inyala dance. I'll leave it up to you to determine who you think did it better, whether it was James or Brent. I'm just checking very carefully as to where these lion tracks have gone to. Lots of hyena in the area. think they moved through the drainage line here to go and have a drink. Hello, Impala. You can see how relaxed they look. You don't look too... Ah, we have a question from a new viewer while we look at these Impala. So Bad Company wanted to know where we are in South Africa and whether or not this is really live. Well, Bad Company, yes, we definitely are, because we're answering your question now. And we are coming to you from the Sabi Sands. We're actually on Juma and Arathusa, our little portion of the Sabi Sands, and we fall into a close to 4 million hectare area. I've got to show you something, sorry. I've got to interrupt Bad Company's question. I promise you we are live. One new viewer actually thought that he had caught us out once by saying that we'd started the show in the dark and it was then light, and therefore it clearly wasn't live and it was clearly pre-recorded. At which point we had to remind them that, in fact, even in South Africa, the morning does tend to get lighter. We go from night to day. Yes, we are definitely live, and we are in the top corner, so the top northeastern corner of South Africa in the greater Kruger area. And if you jump onto Google, you'll be able to see just how large an area it really is. These Impala are being so entertaining. I just want to be able to try and get a view for you. They are coming up to, well, I think that the hormones are starting to build up to their rutting or their breeding time. Look, I wish I could jump like that. The hormones are running wild. But what I wanted to show you is actually happening further ahead. The males are chasing each other around. I know that James... There's our lovely giraffe, who's stuck around this particular side of the dam since yesterday afternoon. This lovely large male giraffe that's fairly familiar to us. Reaching across, get an idea of just how flexible their necks really are. But no, I've got to show you. Sorry, giraffe. We'll come back to you if necessary. But I want to just try and get a view of what these Impala are up to, because they're being hugely entertaining. They're chasing each other around. They're in such high spirits. And while we do that, you never know who we might find around here. Here we go a bit closer. And while we do that, you never know, we might find Nelson, our one-horned, one-eyed Impala. I know Lucy was asking about him. Now, don't stop just because I've come to have a look at you. Those deep grunting sounds. There we go. They're carrying on there. And this is what caused the alarm calls initially. Impala just being very silly. Come on, come back. They're chasing each other around. And as I said, the hormone's starting to build up. I'm just going to sit here for a moment. There we go. Here we go. Look at them go. It's incredible. The whole herd now dashing across in circles. And that's been caused by males harassing them. Breeding season is in May, so we're not there yet, but I think that hormones are building up. And what they're doing is this amazing style of running and jumping that is known as stotting. And it's a way of showing just how fit and healthy they really are. And when you watch them do that, you absolutely couldn't begin to argue with them. And if we're really lucky, we might even see them do a full handstand. We're going to be seeing more and more of this behavior. Some of the last year's lambs, just look at that speed. Here they come again. Here we go. Almost doing the full handstand. There we go, throwing their back legs right up. They are such incredible athletes, and because it's nice and cool, I actually think that they're enjoying themselves as well. It's not just because the males are, there we go again, males are chasing, they're doing the same circuit. I think they're getting fit. Exercise. Look at all those white tails flashing. Accompanied by that hugely, are they going to do the same circuit is what I want to know. Are they going to do that same loop and come back around that corner? If that is the case, then they're doing a defined obstacle course. Nope. Bounce, bounce, bounce. Oh, I wish I could do that. Oh, there we go. Synchronized bouncing. Awesome. All the youngsters, so they're definitely just in high spirits. Have we stopped? Nope. Oh, no, we haven't stopped yet. You're going to be exhausted. Well, this is the first time I've ever managed to capture such a large game with an impala herd. And since we do have such a wonderful sighting, oh, bounce, 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 bounce. Oh, I wish I could do that. If I could do that, I wouldn't stop doing it all day. Somebody's decided that their game is over. They are now exhausted. And since they've stopped for the moment, I believe that the lovely ladies in Final Control have actually prepared a slow motion clip of what we were just witnessing. So let's just have a quick look at that. Synchronized bouncing. How incredible is that? Shame. And there's one female here in this group that will definitely not be joining in the shenanigans. I've lost track of which one she is, but she's got a horrible limp. It's not that one, because she's walking just fine. I think it's this large female that's looking at us. Let's just see when she decides to walk. Yeah. Got a very sore front left leg. It could actually even have been caused by running around with the rest of the group. You know, if she happened to land badly whilst doing that handstand in a hole or some kind of ridge in the ground, they can actually injure themselves doing it. Hopefully that will heal up fairly quickly, because otherwise, oh, shame, poor girl. Otherwise, she's going to be very much a target for any predators in the area. And I've seen impala run on 3 legs before, though. We've just seen a display of their athletic prowess, so she could well be absolutely fine. They heal so quickly. I'm putting my money on her. I think she'll be okay. I don't see any swelling or any breaks. Try and loop back around. Every now and again they still break into their happy dance around the clearing. Oh, bumpy, bumpy. Hold on to your seats, everyone. So Steve, while we are repositioning to watch the impalas at play, Steve was wondering, where do you find a gazelle? And gazelle is just essentially a large umbrella name for a type of antelope, or a family of antelope, or a tribe actually is the correct term of antelope. Let's just see if they carry on in their game. They seem to be having such fun. There's about 50 odd impala here. Steve, things like a Thompson's gazelle you will find in East Africa and Kenya. Oh, there we go again. They're going to do a circuit, I think. They're going to come back around. If I'm judging by their obstacle course, they're going to come back around this corner. They do seem to have an almost set route. Oh, somebody got tired there. And all of the lambs now making that funny little impala sound, the ma, 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 calling to their mothers. Absolute chaos. There's just impala dashing about everywhere. So one of the best examples of stotting I have ever seen, or at least managed to put on our live show. It's awesome. Awesome to see. And with such a large herd of impala as well. Steve, sorry, I didn't fully finish answering your question. With gazelles, you're looking more up towards the eastern part of Africa, so Kenya, Tanzania, you'll get Thompson's gazelle. But as I said, it's quite a broad description for a tribe of antelope. Now, all of the antelope species are divided into tribes, which is essentially the families. So like the spiral-horned antelope family of the Kudu and Impala and bushbuck. Impala, interestingly enough, are not grouped with any other antelope. Rather than being grouped together with the dwarf antelope or indeed the gazelles, they are entirely separate. I think all is calm now, and they've decided that they're a little bit exhausted. It's also the temperature's starting to heat up. It's no longer quite as much fun to dash about like maniacs. That was wonderful to see. James is still desperately trying to find those lions for you. He is off on foot. I'm going to go and see if I can help him now that we've enjoyed this impala sighting. Let's try and figure out exactly where those Nkahuma lionesses have disappeared to. They've led us on a merry dance. Their tracks were up and down, but they were tracks from last night around Gowrie Cutline, so just to the north of the dam. And I think what I'll do to try and assist James is I'll just pop over to Galagopan and see if there's any sign of tracks coming out there. Sorry, Impalalas. That incredible body design that impalas demonstrate. Those long, skinny legs actually barely look capable or strong enough of jumping and arching in the way that they do, but clearly they are. And it's one of those evolutionary designs that has remained practically unchanged for tens of thousands of years. And because they are so clever or so adaptable to different areas, we've spoken a lot about this before, but probably they will prove to be the most resilient animals in the face of this drought for the herbivore species. Very good point from Stephen. Stephen says he bets that James and Brent can't do that Impala dance. Well, certainly I can speak for Brent in saying that he won't be doing any dancing anytime soon, having just pulled his hamstring in a game of cricket, and he's now hobbling along, feeling very sorry for himself and limping quite a lot. So I don't think he will be doing that particular dance anytime soon. James, not sure I'd put it past him, but I'm not going to challenge him to prove that he could. I certainly couldn't. I could probably still do a handstand though. I haven't tried in years, but I could probably still pull it off. But that's definitely not something any of us are going to try and imitate around fireside chat for risk of serious injury. Oh, I forgot about this roadblock. what was wonderful about that particular sighting is, making sure I dodge the virtual reality rig, was the fact that it was a really lovely combination of all ages. Most of them jumping around like that were young females, but there were a couple of young males involved as well. So Jim, yes, both sexes will do it. Females a little bit more commonly than the males, actually. The males tend to chase each other around and make a lot more noise, but the females, I've seen more females do that arching handstand than I have males, and that's probably a product of the fact that horns could well get in the way of an exhibition like that. Where have these lions gone? Yes, both sexes do it, but females more commonly than males. And in this case, it was the youngsters all performing that. And as I said, it's probably a product of the cool weather, the fact that they're happy, they're playing in a way, but it's also the start of the build-up of the hormones that will come into play around May. And for new viewers, I know our regular viewers would have witnessed this before, but for new viewers, this is going to be a really exciting time to watch the impala. First of all, it is the most vocal you'll ever hear impala. They make the most bizarre grunting noise that when you first hear it actually almost sounds like a predator. It sounds like a big cat growling. And they chase each other around, and there will be about a week's period where a male impala will have managed to collect and herd together a group of females. And he will concentrate on nothing but chasing other males away and mating with the females. And the females tend to show great reluctance in that respect. They usually make the males work for it. They race away from him, and he has to keep herding them back. It definitely puts them at their most vulnerable that time of year because they are so distracted. They don't eat, they don't groom themselves. All they focus on is reproducing, and by the end of about 7 or 8 days, they are so exhausted that they just can't maintain it, and the next male steps up to the plate. And that way they keep the genetic line of all of the impala lambs being born fairly fresh. It is a hugely interesting behavior to witness. I'm going to loop around through here. I've said on the subject of the impala that they will probably be the most resilient. Which little swallow have we got here? Oh, well done, Jeandre. It looked like a little, I think it was a little barn swallow, but it was so quick, it was very tricky to see. It was either a barn or might have been a lesser striped. It's slightly smaller. Lesser striped seems unlikely. You don't often see them perching in places like that. Goodness. A trail of destruction here. I think it's safe to say our Inga's elephant has performed further vandalism elsewhere. Why did you go for these branches, you strange? I've decided I'm going to nickname the Inga's visiting elephant Asbo, which most of our UK viewers will understand. For non-UK viewers, that is an antisocial behavioral order. It's destruction. They have totally wreaked havoc, but there's no elephant dung or anything around. Oh, there is actually. Look at this. They have just targeted every single silver cluster leaf they can find. Wow. They've pulled that branch right down. There you go. Massive branches come tumbling down. Unless the wind played a part, but it doesn't look like it. This looks to me like elephants have moved through. Sure. Well, we have said before that the further and further we move into drought, the more the elephants are going to start targeting the trees. And on the subject of drought, that actually brings me to Void's question. about whether or not there will be any benefit for Boyd's question about whether or not there'll be any benefit for the predators at this time in times of hardship. And the answer is yes, there will be an enormous benefit for the predators. Their population will probably actually increase tremendously over the next year or so. And the reason behind that, there's a couple of different reasons. One, there will be lots of carcasses to forage off. When I was in Kruger recently, we saw at least 6 or 7 dead buffalo with vultures that were too full to even eat anymore, and hyenas ignoring them completely and walking past because they were just so full-bellied. There'll be more carcasses to scavenge, and lions and leopards are not above scavenging for themselves. And of course, hyenas will take whatever they can get. And then there's also the fact that there's very little groundwater and there's very little food. So the animals are going to be forced to move along strict areas to go to water, to go and have a drink in areas where there's still dams. Whether or not they're pumped or whether they're naturally occurring, that is where the animals have to go. So the lions and the leopards don't have to move very far from those water points because the game is a lot more concentrated around there. So they don't have to move about looking for them. And that's going to be one of the huge advantages for the predator population over the next few months. We've seen it with the Talamati pride up in Buffelshoek Dam. Not that we've ever seen them before. I certainly haven't. But the fact that they have barely moved from around the large dams in Buffelshoek means that all they have to do is wait for buffalo to come and have a drink. And they can take their pick of the weakest members of the group. Very easy way to go. The other aspect, or the other thing that drought will bring us is much clearer visibility from our side. Obviously, we would far rather put the animals' well-being far ahead of our own, but we are able to see further and further into the bush, which is why a lot of people say that your nice sightings or sightings actually increase in times of drought. To go and check Gallagher Pan. I reckon that James has walked this area flat, but I don't think he's been along in that direction. Ravi is thinking a little bit more about the drought and the effect that it has, and Ravi's saying with thinking about for elephants, they can eat fruits and nuts to get the protein and the nutrients that they would need, and a little bit of the fats and oils as well. But how would they then cope during a drought season? And the answer is they will cope by targeting the trees. They'll start pushing for the roots. A lot of roots have rhizomes in them, so that will provide them with a little bit of, not the same thing as protein, but they will provide them with the nitrates that they need, which essentially is what most protein does provide us with. Not so much energy, but the nitrates. And then they will target the bark of trees. They're going to push more and more trees over. I spoke a lot about this yesterday afternoon, the way that they're going to clear areas like this. And we probably will actually see a difference in the vegetation from the start of the drought to the end of it. That being said, it won't provide them with everything that they need. Most of the elephants will lose condition. Probably it will hasten the death of older elephants or weaker elephants. And unfortunately, I would say that a couple of youngsters probably are not going to be able to survive. So for pregnant females at the moment, if they're going to give birth over the next few months, they need a tremendous amount of nutrition to be able to lactate. And what the drought will mean is that they don't lactate enough and their youngsters probably won't survive. It is going to be tremendously sad over the next few months to witness. The nice thing about the area that we're in is that these animals are not trapped to this area. Now, I've just been through Kruger and I went right through from the north down to the south, and there are still some fresh green patches with plenty of water, healthy trees. The elephants can choose to move there. And this is where those ancient memories come into play for the older elephants that will have experienced droughts like this before. The last big drought was in 1992. So you can guarantee that a lot of the matriarchs of the herds, the older elephants, will know exactly where to go in order to bring their families through the drought safely. Elephants will be hard hit, so will buffalo. The larger the body weight that you need to maintain, the harder it's going to be. I think Impala will prove to be some of the most resilient animals in the respect of the drought. But Jeandre was saying, well then, if they exert so much energy and they behave the way that they do, I think that male Impala will die during the rut? Jen, maybe, but I don't think there's going to be a significant increase to the number of mortalities that we would get already. So generally, quite a few male Impala, the peak rate of male Impala mortality falls over the rutting period because they are so distracted and weakened. But I don't think it'll be a tremendous increase. Looking at the condition of the Impala, to me, most of them seem relatively healthy. This is where I wanted to go check. This is one of the lions, or at least the Nkuhuma's favorite areas, this block to the left of me. It's thick and dense, and it's got lovely tamboti thickets for shade. And they like to use this path. And unfortunately, that's not where they've come today. In that case, I'm going to do one more loop back around to where James is, and while I race across there, let's find out how his tracking went.
Well, not very well is how it went, to be honest, everybody. I walked in there, I found the tracks, finally, and they were going straight into the block over here, and I thought, well, here we go, we'll definitely find the lions now. And I found a number of alarm-calling birds, an alarm-calling squirrel even, a batalier, a tawny eagle again, no lions. And I've now walked pretty much every inch of that block, so I don't know, maybe they just carried on walking after the Kudu alarm called at them. But what we're going to do is do one more loop of this little area here and see if we can't come up with them. It's very frustrating. The other thing that I found many of, you can see they're still with me at the moment, are some small biting flies. Now, very nice to find them. They hitched a ride on my back, bit my legs, bit my arms, and are now heading off for just rest up after their breakfast, basically. You know, very frustrating, very frustrating.
Everyone wonders why we do what we do.
We'll keep trying, just see if they don't pop out at some stage. I only saw tracks of 2 lionesses, but I'm sure the rest would have been with them. And they came from the pan, and so I'm not sure if anybody actually saw them drinking at the pan yesterday. There are a number of mud wallows around the pan, and so even if you were watching the Juma Dam pan with great enthusiasm during the course of yesterday evening, it's quite possible you wouldn't have seen them, because they could easily have drunk somewhere close by where there is a bit of standing water. Oh, David, let us keep a sharp eye off into the left-hand side there. I did find the Kudu, I think, that were alarm calling, looking like they didn't have a care in the world. Happy as Larry with those Kudu. Anyway. Hello, Angel's Ages. Nice question about invasive species. You want to know if there are any species around here that are perhaps invasive, brought in by human beings. Not in terms of the mammals, no, absolutely not. All the mammals here are indigenous. There are 1 or 2 bird species, especially in the cities, that cause a bit of trouble. One of them is the Indian myna, which is a starling-like bird, highly intelligent, but it is rather nasty and takes over everywhere where it lives. Durban, for example, there are just hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them. Then the European starling is a starling from, unsurprisingly, Europe, and we don't get them here, but they do occur also kind of in urban environments and some sort of farming environments as well. They don't cause a huge problem, but they are around. And then the other bird that is quite invasive in cities is the feral pigeon. David, quickly, there's a mongoose on the ground there. It's a slender mongoose. We very seldom get to see them. You see it? It's gone. Oh well. That was a slender mongoose. They always run away from us. They're not like the dwarf mongoose, which is very happy to sit and interact. And then plants, obviously, angels, ages, yes. Not so much in this area. There are one or two that come down every time there's a flood. A wild tobacco, a Mexican poppy. They're a bit of a disaster in the bigger river systems. But the biggest plant invader here is something called Chromalina odorata, or the triffid weed. And I think that also comes from Asia somewhere, if I'm not mistaken. But so no mammals, but plenty of plants that are invasive. The most obvious exotic we get here is actually a very pretty thing called Zinnia peruviana, unsurprisingly from Peru, which is a beautiful red flower that comes up in the rains. It's not invasive, but it is exotic. There's the distinction, of course. An invasive species is an exotic one that, because of a lack of natural predators, will take over. So it will kill off the local fauna or local flora, and because of nothing here eats it, it'll just take over. The triffid weed or Chromalina is a great example of that. And then you get exotics which are pretty harmless. They just kind of grow here and survive and don't poison anything and don't tend to take over. And I guess that zinnia would be a good example. But we do have deer in some parts of South Africa, but they're all in fairly contained areas, so we know where they all are. A mammal, of course, is much more easy to deal with than a plant. Well, Cindy, you want to know about the rock hyrax, you're from North Carolina. Very nice, beautiful animal, fascinating animal. Lives in a family of its own with the tree hyrax, its close cousin. You want to know why we don't get them here? Well, we don't get them here, Cindy, simply because there aren't any rocks. I mean, not to put too fine a point on it. They like mountains and, very large rocky outcrops you'll find them in. And they're certainly up near Palabor, where there's some enormous rocky outcrops, and you find the odd one there. And I have actually seen them further down south in the Sabi Sands on one or two of the bigger rocky outcrops there. So you can find them around, but on Juma, there are no rocky outcrops, and therefore you will not find the rock hyrax. The tree hyrax seems to be much more limited to coastal areas and in forests. And for those of you who don't know, a hyrax is a kind of it's a sort of indistinct. Indistinct is the wrong word. It's a sort of it's a unique animal in that it occurs in its own order. So where the elephants are in the order Proboscidae, the hyraxes are in their own order, which is called the Hyraxidae, I think, something like that. And they're quite closely related orders. But to be in your own order with no other relatives means that you're the only one in your order, you're the only one in your family, you're the only one in your genus, and you're the only one in your species. So I think there are only 2 or 3 species, only one genus, and one family and one order, which means that they separated from a common ancestor millions of years ago, and all other relatives have died out for some reason. And they are specialized on by the black or Vervet's eagle. So where you have rock hyrax, you can be almost certain that you will have a black or Vervet's eagle around, and they are my favorite eagles. I don't know why, they just are. I think they're the first eagle I actually ever managed to identify, so I think that's probably why they're my favorite. Now we're going to do one more pass down this road here, which I'm feeling very dejected indeed about my lion tracking this morning. They're around here somewhere. And of course now it's got hot, so they're not going to be moving. And Paul, you're on YouTube. You want to know about invasive reptiles. Do we get invasive reptiles? No, I don't think we do. I know that there's the odd Burmese python knocking about the place, not in this area, around cities. You know, people who bring in pets, exotic pets, because it's clever to have an exotic pet if you're an idiot. They sometimes release them, or these animals escape, and then they become a bit of a problem. But I mean, a Burmese python, of course, is going to struggle to find other Burmese pythons with whom to make new Burmese pythons. And so, not really any exotic reptiles that I can think of. Oh, that's not true. That's not true. But there's a gecko. There's a large tropical house gecko, which I think replaces I don't know where it's from. I think it's from the Caribbean, if I'm not mistaken. That's right. And this gecko is replacing a lot of the native South African species. He's a big, translucent, fairly aggressive-looking gecko, and he is an invasive problem. That's a good question. Thank you, Paul, for reminding me of that one. The other thing we get in Johannesburg and the cities, I think you get them in Durban too, are the rose-ringed parakeet. They seem to be a kind of repository of exotic birds, these urban forests. And the rose-ringed parakeet escaped from an aviary. Well, obviously not one, a number of them, and they've set up fairly vast colonies throughout Johannesburg, and it's the most incongruous thing seeing this tropical parrot flying overhead when you're driving along in the city streets of urban Johannesburg. Oh, there's a pig. Okay, we've got some monkeys with Jamie. We're going to stop here by this pig and ask him where the lions are. We'll see you shortly.
From a discussion of the exotic to the very much indigenous vervet monkeys. They were all on the ground, I think, actually trying to get to... Oh, let me see if I can't get you a view of that baby. Trying to get to a late fall of marula fruits. There's a tiny little one that's been clinging to mom. It's just above her head. You see its tail sticking down. There we go. Little one. Amazing how agile they are. Even at such a young, tender age, being able to dash about the tree like that. I think they were all on the ground targeting, as I said, a late fall of marula fruit. Well, I don't see any on the ground here, but they were right next to a pair of steenbok. Very common for monkeys and steenbok to forage on the ground together. Also see it regularly with Impala. There's the little one. Well done, Jeandre. Tail swinging, that perfect balancing instrument. All ducked away into the thicker foliage, hiding in the vegetation, pretending that they can't be seen. See if they relax a little bit. That little one might decide to become quite playful. Here we go. Oh, yeah, he's going to just take himself further away. Monkeys have some of the best eyesight in the bush, so it's useful to always listen to the alarm calls of the monkeys, which is why the steenbok that we saw earlier felt so comfortable in their presence or having them around. There's always at least one monkey sitting up in the tree, keeping an eye on the possibility of threats. Oh, having a serious scratch. Look how fast still hands moving on its tail. Nestled up in the shade of the branches. It must be nice and cool up there. And the clouds have all burnt off. The sun is now beating down. And already the temperature's shot up at least 10 degrees. Try inch forward, get a slightly better view, but I think they're going to stay tucked away in the dense foliage. Excuse me. Oh, here's the little one on the top there. Little one nearly fell down, nearly missed that jump. Oof, you've gone very high, baby. Oh, oh. Careful. So I said it's amazing how agile they are, but still don't quite have the level of coordination that the adults have. Not uncommon for them to fall out of trees. I had one amazing sighting with an elephant feeding underneath a marula tree, and I had no idea that there were monkeys nestled up at the top until they decided that they'd had enough of the presence of the elephant, and they all jumped from about the distance that our... There, he's playing. This is what I was hoping it would do. Jump around, test the limits of his strength. But yes, these monkeys all decided to jump out of the marula tree from an enormous height, and they all flew out belly first before landing on the ground and scampering away. So it's amazing how resilient their joints and their bones really are in terms of coping with jumps from enormous heights. So if he were to miss his grip and fall out, he'd be absolutely fine. Come on, little one, come play a bit closer to us. Doing a circuit like the young Impala. We see vervet monkeys on a fairly regular basis. We don't see their cousins, the chacma baboons, as frequently. I know that Pirate Jack was wondering whether we get any large gorillas or baboons. The largest primate that we get is the chacma baboon. The gorillas are more towards the Central African regions in the rainforest. We don't have any down here. We don't have any of the larger ape species, the chimpanzees, orangutans, anything like that is far beyond our borders. Now, the largest primate that you could see is a chacma baboon. Rolf, yeah, little one is jumping around like a maniac. Pirate Jack, we've seen less and less of the baboons recently. It might be largely due to the drought, that they're moving into the river areas where there's a bit more food, a bit more fruit, and a bit more protection for them. One big troop did move through. What have you found there, little monkey? Gone again. Always a possibility we could see them. I haven't managed to put them on our live show yet, but apparently there was a troop of baboons that was fairly regularly seen a couple of years ago, known as the Gowrie Gang. That's our largest primate species. They're big. I mean, the biggest male chacma baboon would be very much capable of taking on and killing a leopard. They have enormous canines, larger than that of even a leopard. They're exceptionally strong. One last final push in the last few moments of our sunrise safari for the lions. In the meantime, James has found some more pachyderms to show you.
More elephants over there, everybody, and I just thought a nice way to finish off our morning. We are in the block around where I thought maybe the lions had come, so a good excuse to just drive in here. And that's the half-trunk female, which we'll call her, and her little herd, which is reduced again to just 4. It was 6 yesterday evening, and now it is 4 again. And I think what they will do is spend much of the day in the trees here. Probably have a bit of a snooze as the heat starts to build. Certainly the sun has broken through the clouds and is now searing the right-hand side of my face. And that is what happens out here, of course, during the course of the summer. Hello, Bear in Ontario. Very valid questions. You watch elephants' feet while they're walking through thorny, rocky, fairly sort of uncomfortable-looking ground. What is the sole of an elephant's foot like? Bear, the sole of an elephant's foot is actually quite soft, but it's got a very thick callus, and by very thick, I mean probably sort of 3 inches thick. And so, yes, thorns can go in there, but then eventually they just kind of break off inside the callus, and the callus will be replaced from above. So thorns, yes, sometimes, but it doesn't affect them much. What they don't like to walk on is rocks. And in Namibia, the desert elephant has had to adapt to putting up with walking around on rocks, and it's quite interesting to watch them trying to kind of ease their way. But if you've ever got a sort of water tank and there's a drought and you don't want elephants to go and pull it off its stand, then you put sort of sharp rocks around there, and they don't like to walk on them. A peaceful scene, you can see the light then has caught them. Curtis, you're in Virginia, and you say, do elephants ever have any health troubles from being so large? I'm wondering what you mean by health troubles. I don't think any more than any other animal out here. You know, they occupy a niche. And the niche is, well, I mean, the official kind of definition is incomprehensible. It's an n-dimensional hypervolume of different factors that might affect an animal's life. Basically, what it means is they occupy a niche in which they're optimally positioned to do so. So they eat what they can eat, and they've replaced any other kind of obvious competition for the things that they eat. There will be some overlap with what they eat compared with other animals, so that might cause them some nutritional difficulty. I mean, the only real health issues they're going to have is during a drought, when there's some kind of time of lack. And elephants actually will cope better with a drought than will something like a warthog, because they can move further. They have a greater number of things that they can eat. So no, I don't think their size affects their health at all, really. If anything, it probably makes them slightly more resilient, I think, compared with some of the smaller species. Here comes the young bull that was... Oh, no, he's not. He's lost a tusk, this chap. I don't know who he is. He is a young bull. And he's been crying. It's either mud or a weeping eye. You know, he's not normally part of this little group, but a little bull like this will be tolerated completely with a little herd like this, as long as he doesn't throw his weight around. You can see his weight is not very substantial at this stage. He's probably only about 2 tons, only about 2,000 kilograms. He's walking through some pretty thorny stuff. Let's just sneak a little bit forward, Darv, and see if we can get a slightly better view of him. There he comes. He's eating some of that Xerophyta retinervis, or the baboon's tail, which has gone a bit green since the little bit of rain we had. You can see very clearly why I say he's a bull. And quite interestingly, I mean, while he is obviously a bull, when they are young like this, and the point of my telling you that is when they're young like this, unless you can see that, it is quite difficult. They will tell you that a bull elephant's skull is slightly rounder. Not at this age. He's got a pretty square skull, but like the cows, his back is supposed to be bowed. That looks pretty straight, just like the cows. Anyway, as these chaps disappear and melt off into the bush, a big thank you to all of you for putting up with my incompetence in the lion tracking today. We'll hopefully have some better luck this afternoon. Thank you, David, for your efforts. And to Kirsten and Louise in the final control. We're going to hand you over to Jamie and some dwarf mongoose for the last part of the drive. We'll see you later at 4 o'clock. Stay safe and happy. Bye-bye.
An unsuccessful search for the largest predator on Juma. We did happen to find the smallest. Trying to get them to show their heads again. Oh. Dashing away. There is one very curious little baby head. poking out of a hole. Oh, nope. Not feeling particularly, or feeling a little bit camera shy maybe is a better term. There's another one poking its head out over that log. Well, a nice way to end the drive with one of my favorite little creatures. I find dwarf mongoose fascinating to watch. They're fascinating little social structure. But unfortunately, we have run out of time, so a big thank you to Jeandre for all of his fantastic camera work, as well as to Kirsty and Lou doing an excellent job in final control. Most importantly, to all of you, thank you for joining us, and thank you as well for those wonderful questions. We're getting some incredible questions coming through that are really going into the nitty-gritty details. Have a wonderful day, and we will catch you on the Sunset Safari. Cheers for now, everyone.